All right, it is 6:06. It is my pleasure to call to order the Wednesday, November 6th meeting of the Freeport Planning Board. We have a full board tonight and more people in the room than is our average. Above average night, hopefully in many ways. We do have a long agenda, so I want to try to move quickly. We'll kick it off, as always, with item number 1, an information exchange, and we'll turn it over to Kyle Drexler, our town planner.
Thanks, Sam. So first item, report on items reviewed by the Project Review Board. So at its last meeting, I believe it was on October 16th, there were 3 items that went before the board. So we had a shoreline stabilization application that was approved at 35 Jordan Road. We had a design review certificate approved at 148 Main Street. They were replacing the existing door on the building as they're preparing for a new business to go in there. And then 172 Lower Main Street, which is the AEC building, which came to the planning board, I believe, for a zoning text amendment previously. So they were going to the PRB for their conceptual site plan meeting, and they'll actually be following up with their site plan final application later this month. So those were the 3 items there. Number 2, our design review ordinance update. So if you're at the voting yesterday, maybe you saw we had the tabling there for the design review ordinance. We got a lot of feedback. It was really good to see people stop by and show interest in that. So thanks to all the planning board members as well who stopped by to help out on that. We are looking to have North Star come and do a design review ordinance discussion with the planning board at its December 4th meeting. If people are good with that, and we would try to make that probably a joint meeting with the PRB as well, so we could get everyone's feedback all at one time. So we'll probably follow up with more information on that. And then number 3, our January planning board meeting date. So the normal planning board meeting in January is going to fall on New Year's. So we have a couple different options. If people could weigh in now on a preliminary level, maybe on availability on either Thursday the 2nd or Wednesday the 8th. If people have an immediate preference now, that would be great. If not, we'll have to follow up later on to figure that out.
Does anybody have a preference?
Well, I'm wondering, is school vacation run through that week? You don't know, Sam?
I don't have it in my calendar yet. That day is probably back to school.
That Thursday? It would be.
Yeah.
That Thursday?
I think it is. I think that's true.
I'm pretty sure that's true. And I'd probably prefer the 2nd.
Me too. Me as well.
The 2nd to the 8th, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yep.
Me as well.
I mean, I'm sure I won't travel on the 2nd, but by the 8th, who knows what could happen.
That's probably a safe bet for me as well.
It's fine with me. Yeah.
Okay. We'll look into the 2nd then, just to make sure on that, and then I'll send a follow-up email just to verify with everyone that we'll have a quorum. So, all right. And that's it. Thanks.
I think we have flashing lights to remind probably you, Mitch, to turn here. Not to call you out in public or
It's
anything.
all right. I had 3 things I just wanted to mention in the information exchange. One is about the design review. So in preparation for that meeting on the 4th, I hope that they can provide conversation starters.
Okay. Yep.
Because I think I haven't yet heard, this is what we're going to try and solve. I mean, I sort of understand it. I mean, I did some of the tabling there on election day, and I was aware that I think we know most of the motivation was to make it easier for people to understand what is or isn't acceptable, and not necessarily to change the rules, but to make it more explicit. But there's comments about what those rules should be, and if that's what we're going to get, I think we should be very focused in that on what are the issues we need to resolve.
Okay.
That's that. And then I suppose I should give an information exchange on the Housing Committee and the dog bone group. And I don't know if everybody here is up to speed, and it's worth a sentence or 2.
If it can be super brief, I think it's okay.
Well, I think I can do it in one sentence each.
Okay.
The Housing Committee met sometime 3 weeks ago and mostly focused on how to make the land use workshop that's coming up on Monday, the 18th, more productive, and we came up with recommendations and channeled that through Brett back to the North Star. And the Dog Bone Committee is also, there's another meeting of the housing group this next Wednesday, so the Wednesday before the Land Use Committee, so I guess we'll be a little bit more prepared. That group has some other ideas, but not for now. And on the Dog Bone work, that's like a task force, it's 3 meetings to help guide Brett to a proposal that he can bring to the council to consider further. There's many steps along the way before this would happen. But we spent most of the last meeting on infrastructure, most of the first meeting on finances. I think there's one more meeting that comes right after the land use workshop that'll pull it all together.
Yeah, and Wayne, just for those of you on the board who don't know, Wayne is also serving on the committee, so we are fortunate to have 2 members of this board on the Dog Bone Committee, which I think is great, because hopefully the recommendations that come out of that are going to be really planning focused and zoning focused. So I'm excited about that. I think I've seen some of the preliminary stuff that I will share with the planning board at some point. And I know we have a lot on our plates right now, so I don't want to.
It's totally worthy of discussion
Oh,
when
yeah,
it gets to the next
absolutely.
stage, and this group will want to weigh in, and we should be talking about it in a deep way, but not tonight.
Yep. We're going to strike item number 2. There was no public hearing at the October 2nd planning board meeting, and therefore there are no meeting notes. So, if anyone wants to learn about that meeting, you get to go back and listen to it. I guess that's the way it works, right? So item number 3 is a public hearing. Maine Beer Company is requesting a zoning map amendment, and this is, or will be, a public hearing to discuss that zoning map amendment application to rezone a portion of the lot located at 2 Stagecoach Road. It's a 4.5 acre lot, currently zoned Rural Residential 1. The applicant is proposing to bisect the lot so that the easterly portion of the lot remains in the Rural Residential 1, while approximately 2 acres of the westerly portion of the lot would be rezoned to Commercial 1, which is the zoning, I believe, of their existing lot. So again, this is an applicant-driven zoning map amendment. We had a discussion about it at our last meeting. That was the October 2nd meeting. And we are here today to hold a public hearing, and then if the board is in favor of moving this along, we would make a recommendation to the council, who will then discuss it and set a public hearing to actually enact that proposed change. So there would still be 2 more meetings at the council level, just so that everybody understands. We're probably going to say that at least maybe 2 more times tonight. But that is the standard way that this process works. The planning board makes a recommendation to the council holds, or has a meeting to set a public hearing, then there is another public hearing at the council level, and they will adopt the ordinances in a final form if they so choose, which hopefully they do. Kyle, do you want to provide some background on this?
Yeah. So there's not too much to add. I mean, from the actual physical change of it, it's pretty straightforward, right? So Maine Beer Company operates their business on the lot just north of this property. They have a purchase and sale on this property here. They're looking to do a rezone, as you said, where the west half of the lot would be rezoned to C1, which is the existing zoning to the north and to the west here. So along Route 1 in this part of town, in the corridor here, a lot of it is zoned already as Commercial 1. There's kind of this stretch on the east side here of about 5 lots that are in this RR1 zoning. The applicant looked at it. They're interested in doing the rezone here, but they are leaving in the proposal the eastern half of the lot in that RR1 zoning to provide potential buffer to the more rural areas to the east, so that if something were to happen in the future on this lot, you'd be on that Route 1 front frontage side of the lot and not coming off the Stagecoach side. So that's sort of the intent there with the actual zoning amendment. As far as process goes, you outlined it. We had the discussion. We're at the public hearing stage. So we sent out legal ads to the paper to check that box. We sent out a butters notice and posted the agendas in the applicable places. We've also included in the staff report some background on some comprehensive plan items. So part of, or really the main goal of the planning board in this process is to provide a recommendation to council finding that the zoning map amendment is consistent with the town's existing comprehensive plan and any land use implications they think the proposal might have. So we added in just a little bit of context there from our existing comp plan, but of course, if the planning board wishes to talk about anything else, that's totally relevant as well. And then we put in some proposed recommendation language just to follow if someone is interested in making a motion. But yeah, with that being said, I think that pretty much covers it. I'm sure the applicant can add more detail as well.
Before we open the public hearing, does anyone from the applicant's team wish to provide additional context? Do I hear a motion to open the, Steve? As a reminder, if anyone, and I'll say this hopefully just once, but if anyone speaking tonight, please make your way to the podium and identify yourself for the record.
I'm Steve Mills. I'm the CEO of Maine Beer Company. I'm also a resident here in Freeport. I just wanted, in case there were any burning questions, I mean, I think you all know that what our intent is, right? We talked about that last time. So this is a big deal for us, and, you know, I want to emphasize that it's important. Freeport's important to us. We want to be here in Freeport, thriving in Freeport, being a good community member of Freeport for decades to come. And this really unlocks it for us. So it's a big deal, and thank you for your consideration, and we hope we get your recommendation.
Could offer some real quick additional context. I'm Brett Richardson. I'm the development director with the town. I think in some ways, Steve is being a little modest there. Maine Beer Company is critical to Freeport. 400,000 people come to Freeport and visit Maine Beer Company every year. They employ over 100 people, and they're an employer of choice, which means that they take care of their people really well. They pay them well. They provide great benefits. I think they cover 100% of their health insurance. So a great asset to the community. They export the Maine and the Freeport brand around the country. If you go to other parts of the country, you can get a Maine beer, and it's great to see that when you're out traveling. So I think it's really important for tonight, too, to understand that Maine Beer Company has really approached this request in a thoughtful way. They look to balance their needs for growth to stay in Freeport with the needs of their neighbors and the community as a whole. So from a staff perspective, it's pretty clear that this fits the comprehensive plan and is worthy of support. Thank you.
Do I hear a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
From Dave, in a second.
Second.
From Rosemary. All in favor? The public hearing is now open. Anyone else who wishes to speak? Podium can be yours. But you better move quick, because I'm going to move quick tonight, so.
Hi, my name is Jeannie Matson, and I am the Managing Director of Advancement at Wolfsneck Center, and I'm also a Freeport resident. I've lived here for about 12 years. And I made a lot of notes, but I love what, I don't know who you are, but that was awesome. I'm actually not a beer drinker because I have this annoying gluten allergy, but I can say from all the events that I've been to where Maine Beer Company has donated beer, people love it. I think that they're a beloved business in this town. And we are, at Wolfsneck, we are really proud to be a 1% for the Planet partner of Maine Beer Company. In fact, you may or may not know this, but Maine Beer Company and Wolfsneck won an award that we received at the Global Summit for 1% for the Planet for our partnership and how we model our relationship in terms of their support of our nonprofit work around sustainability. They've just been an amazing partner through donating product. They've really helped to advance our own sustainability goals. Not only do they have theirs that they model that anybody driving by can see that massive solar array, and we can be so proud of. They've helped Wolfsneck. We have a couple of solar arrays that they've been instrumental in supporting. And I just agree that the brand that they have is so great for Freeport, for Maine, that the combination of quality and commitment to the planet is really valuable, and I hope that this moves forward. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah. I'm the Executive Director at Freeport Community Services, and I'm here to just send my absolute appreciation to Maine Beer Company for the incredible support over the years, and also emphasize the great work that they do within our community. I get to see it firsthand at the community center. Oftentimes, we'll have literal tons of food being donated to our food pantry. Maine Beer Company, your team is a phone call away, and we're so grateful for that. They also support the organization in a variety of ways, sponsoring our Thanksgiving Day meal in the past, where we serve over 200 folks a warm meal on the day of Thanksgiving, and also offer home deliveries for that as well. And we're just truly grateful for that support, and really feel like they're an incredible asset, not just for our organization, but for our residents here in Freeport and Pownell who really rely on resources that we offer at FCS.
Carrie Kinney from the Freeport Conservation Trust. I don't think I need to go on and on. You're hearing it, but I just want to say I really appreciate Maine Beer Company's business model and the terrific partnership, and how conservation-minded they are. Their support of our organization has moved conservation forward, and that's pretty amazing. So that's great. So totally supportive. Thanks.
Is there anyone opposed?
We did have one person who was
Last
who was
time.
careful not to. She wasn't stating opposition, just concern for increased. And I think we all
Traffic.
noted that as a potential enforcement issue to keep an eye on. But otherwise, yeah.
So I believe we did look into that last time with our police department. And they flagged that it had been a concern, an issue in the past, but as far as they're aware, currently
It's
it's,
been a
yeah, not.
Just to correct the record,
Yep.
since that conversation, there was an event I live off of Pine Street, and there was an event at Maine Beer, and the cars were parked on
Okay.
Pine Street. So I
maybe
don't know if it's
ongoing.
their job, or maybe we need signs there, because I think Pine Street can handle it. There isn't much traffic that comes out the back there. It's just the parking that makes it uncomfortable. People
Maybe
can
this-
walk there, and it's a really narrow road, and fast cars and all that.
Maybe something for the project review board to keep in mind too, and also the applicants as they're going through the site plan process, and they have more space to work with now, so it seems like some good options for resolution. Do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close?
Rosemary, and second, reversing roles. Rosemary and Dave. All in favor?
I would just like to make a comment before we have a, all in favor of closing the
Closing
public
the
hearing?
public hearing.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah, there's been no motion, Mitch.
Yes, okay, right.
It's okay.
Who
Well, the
wants to
public
move
hearing is now
fast?
closed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, y'all better, stay on your toes.
Yeah.
Yeah, any questions, comments from the board? Now is the time.
I do have one comment that I think is important to state. I love Maine Beer, and I particularly like Peeper, and they're a really good neighbor. But I think that their role in the community is not what's relevant here, and that we should be, our concern should be zoning and abutters and whether this is a good use of land. That said, this is a very good use of land. Makes all the sense in the world. It should be zoned commercial. I completely support it.
Yeah, I think that's a great,
I just
think
wanted
that's a
to
great
make
point.
sure
Yeah.
that it's not just, if you're good, you get special dispensation. That's not appropriate.
Yep, I would agree with that. I think the board has a good record of trying to be fair and balanced, and where we can support the community, supporting the community, but also keeping in mind that we're doing it not just to advance somebody's interests. So, yeah, I have no issues with this whatsoever. I think it's a thoughtful application, and I think even seeing anyone you look at the map and it makes perfect sense. They've even been thoughtful enough to leave the back half as rural residential. It's a good buffer. So, any other comments? We have, Kyle, I believe, or somebody was generous enough to include some sort of rough proposed draft
Okay, where is it?
language in here. It is on page 2 of the staff report. Anyone who wishes to attempt such a motion, please keep in mind that we need
there
any
it
of
is.
these motions, always have,
Oh,
and
yes.
will continue to need to be found to be in.
Well, yeah, I don't
harmony
have it
with
in
the
front of me,
existing-
but I think I could do it. I mean,
You don't have the motion ready.
no,
It's
the,
right
con- no,
Oh, the
the,
comp-
the comp, the
comp
comp
plan, yeah,
plan,
division.
you know, yes, in which way.
Encouraging a wide variety of
The-
business
Wide
interests.
variety of business interests,
Right.
exactly, that's what I'm looking for.
That's right above also. Am I wrong?
He knows what we need.
You don't necessarily.
Yeah, I have it
Do you
here.
have the staff report?
Yes.
Immediately above.
The bullet point above.
Oh, yeah, thank you, sir.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're,
I just wanted to, the board could add other things to that, but it's there as a reference.
that's.
Totally makes sense, though.
so may I make a motion?
They're just fine.
Of course.
Be it ordered that the Freeport Planning Board recommends to the town council that the zoning map amendment application submitted by Maine Beer Company to rezone a portion of the lot from rural residential District 1 to commercial District 1 at tax map 23, lot 44B, is consistent with the comprehensive plan and has the support of this board. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan in supporting a strong and stable economy and a diversity of commercial enterprises throughout the town. Oh, and promoting Freeport as a destination to visitors.
Certainly. So here a second.
Second.
All in favor? All right. Thanks to all involved in that application for being good stewards of the community and presenting a very appropriate application. And we wish you the best in the next phases of the process. Item number, what is it, 4? Am I right about that?
We are on,
Item number 4 is another public hearing. So this is from Hestad Family Holding LLC. This is another applicant-driven zoning ordinance amendment. We have not had a discussion about this, but we have, at the applicant's request, gone straight to holding a public hearing.
I gotcha.
So this was, I believe, on the agenda a while ago and then was delayed, perhaps, struck. Is that right? A couple months ago? Oh, maybe it didn't actually make it to the agenda. Okay, anyway, sorry. Neither here nor there. So this will be a public hearing to discuss the zoning text amendment application to amend the definition of campground in section 104 definitions of the Freeport zoning ordinance. The proposed amendment would remove the requirement for rental cabins in campgrounds to be seasonal. The applicant and owner is Hestad Family Holding LLC, it's tax map 22, lot 8, and I believe the sort of commonly understood name is Desert of Maine. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. So, Doug and/or Mila, would you guys like to walk us through? Oh, sorry.
I'd love to give some context here.
Yes.
So this is, my name's Doug Heestand, co-owner of the Desert of Maine. So 5 years ago, when we went to build, bought the Desert of Maine and went to build our first cabin, we realized you couldn't at the time build a cabin in a campground in Freeport. So we worked to build this language, and so I have no one to blame but myself. The restrictions that we put in the definition for campground were to ease some concerns around our campground turning into like apartments or that sort of thing. So we restricted rental of cabins from May through the end of October. And it turns out it would be actually quite great for some of our cabins to be available in the winter. Our cabins are built to the very strict standards of the 2021 IECC, so they could you could go to the cabins for a winter retreat or when visiting family in the area, that sort of thing. And it would just be very helpful for the economics of running a campground. Currently, we just have to make all of our money in 6 months, and we have a full-time staff now that is salaried, and we pay all year. So just ease some of the burden, and frankly, we think it's an unnecessary restriction just because some of the other restrictions that are already in there would preclude someone from trying to live there long-term. The cabins are small, there's no cooking facilities, and people are limited to stays of no more than 14 days. And just one more thing. We work with our neighbors just to hear out their concerns, and one in particular are drafting a supplemental agreement just to address some of their concerns around traffic. We don't think those concerns are applicable to the entire town and therefore to the definition, but this is something we've done very thoughtfully with our neighbors. That's it.
All right. Kyle, do you have, yeah, sorry, I kind of skipped over your
Context, yeah.
background section there, but I guess, so we've heard from the applicant first, and now we'll hear from our town planner. No, that's my
It's
fault. I invited you up there.
It's a great overview.
Not fault.
So yeah, I mean, this is a zoning text amendment, as it was kind of alluded to. Unlike the last item where we have a specific parcel in mind with the change, this amendment is a amendment to a definition in our zoning ordinance that applies townwide. So this isn't just for the Desert Main, it's to all campgrounds in town. So when the board's making their recommendation about land use implications and consistency, just to have that in mind. That being said, as Doug mentioned, there are a number of restrictions in the definition that aim to prevent these cabins from being considered a typical dwelling unit. The other ones remain. It's really just the seasonal nature that's would be going away. It's a pretty small scale amendment from just the pure redlining of it. When we think about things like potential traffic increases, we're not really expanding the use at all by doing this. It's more of just operating that same use for a longer duration of time. So more on the process side, because the amendment's pretty, I think, straightforward, what Doug explained. Again, we just jumped kind of straight into the public hearing here. When we met with the applicant originally, going over the application, we kind of outlined both options. The ordinance doesn't specify that an applicant-driven zoning amendment has to have a discussion at the planning board level, followed by a public hearing. So we really left that up to the applicant to kind of weigh the pros and cons of that. We felt this was a kind of short enough change that, if the board did have concerns, we could always, table a discussion and come back. But if it, could be done in one meeting, that we could just do it that way. We did send out legal ads to the newspaper and post agendas in the required places as far as notice goes. And again, we would be asking the board for a recommendation to the town council. And if that positive recommendation was made, we would go forward with that process. Happy to answer any other questions.
Before we open a public hearing, does the board have any questions?
Well, I guess I have a question. First of all, I mean, I guess, does the town have any context to why there was a seasonal restriction in the first place? I heard that, but
Yeah.
do we have anything, is there any sort of different context than that? And two, is there heat supply, heat source in these cabins?
As for the Doug Heastand again, as far as the heat source, we use heat pumps in our cabins. Yeah.
So I would say I wasn't around for the First Amendment, but as Doug mentioned, I think it was, part of that was to alleviate concerns that they would be used for more formal dwelling opportunities. And I think if there's a traffic concern about that, where you're looking at, potential increases in trip generation to campgrounds in certain times of year or something. If that
off-season,
right, if that were a consideration, that would still be an item viewed through and reviewed through the site plan process. For instance, if traffic was going to to change, and a campground was going to be amended to include, a number of cabins that were now going to be used, full year-round, that would require updated trip generation, and something like that would be tackled through that process.
So would this change require a site plan amendment, though? Because, I mean, all the cabins are already there, right? You're not proposing building any
Right.
new cabins at this point.
This wouldn't in itself, but if new cabins were introduced or the campground was
New ones were
expanded in
built
some
in.
way, then when it went back to the board, it would have to meet any new standards.
So not just the fact that there's additional traffic, that the old traffic calculations might be changed, that wouldn't in and of
Well,
itself be
because
enough
this-
to trigger a new site plan?
This
Is that
wouldn't
correct?
create new traffic, it would only create the same traffic more
Seasonally. Okay.
of the
Yep,
year.
that's my
Right, and I
question.
guess that's the thing, really, peak hour trips wouldn't necessarily go up because it would
Same
just
number
be.
of cabins.
Yeah.
How many cabins are there?
So we have a total of 29 currently. The ones that would be used for the off-season, currently none for this off-season. For the next off-season, 9, and then as much as 15 or 17. Yeah, so somewhere in that range, about half of our cabins.
Yeah, I was definitely around when we amended the campground. I think the amendment was part of your
Yeah,
process,
I authored this, unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't remember we must have had a campground definition before, right? So we amended it to include the
Yeah.
cabins. I don't remember what the justification for seasonal, other than wanting some restrictions, but I agree, it seems like we already have the sort of necessary restrictions. I mean, obviously, we have plenty of seasonal stuff going on in town. It would be great to encourage more, off-season use. And given that we're not proposing, sort of like a day-to-day increase of doubling the traffic or anything, it doesn't seem to me like.
Sorry about the traffic.
Yeah, it doesn't, and I know we're not just talking about this one, but I would have no issue if Wolf's Neck all of a sudden decided they wanted to have seasonal, not seasonal, year-round cabins down. I mean, they do have some year-round cabins, or it's year-round users, right, down there? So,
Yeah, they do,
and it seems to be fine, so.
There's Main Idle Courts, isn't there?
Main Idle.
Main Idle Courts.
Oh, yeah, up on Route 1
But
North.
are they a camp? They're not
No, they're not a
Cabins.
campground, but they.
The cabins.
They just have cabins.
They are
But they're
cabins.
So they don't
not-
use them for,
They're not,
but if they wanted
They
to, I mean, that would be
should
fine.
available.
Yeah.
they would be
They would?
able to,
Right.
under
Right.
this.
Oh, they already do.
Well, are they defined as a campground?
But people stay there in the winter.
They do?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I thought it was.
I think they have heat in some of them.
'Cause maybe they're
They're grandfathered. They've been
they're
there
a
since
grandfather.
50s.
Forever.
40s.
Yeah.
You're right. Well, we're not an enforcement body anyway, so.
Just to clarify, I believe they're not a campground, they're a hotel motel.
They're a hotel, right, that's what I was,
Oh, really?
And I want to know one other thing for you. You were right, Sam, this would apply larger than just this one property. And I think Kyle said you probably had campgrounds before. We did have campgrounds before. They've always been seasonal in nature. I think when Doug came in, they introduced cabins. They used to not be allowed with campgrounds, and
Right.
there was concern that these don't turn into residential units because there's a whole nother set of standards.
Right.
So I think there was a timing constraint, but the language before you still acknowledges that they are still transient. I think there's a 14-day, and none of these can have cooking facilities, so they are not designed to be units. It just will like enhance their season in case anyone wants to camp in the winter.
I mean, Wolf's Neck has a couple of cabins too.
Yeah,
don't they?
yeah, they
So,
do.
yeah.
They do, they had some that at the time were legally non-conforming that they had
Now they're
replaced.
just legally.
Yep.
Yeah, I really see no issue with this personally, and it's not like we have a room full of angry people here telling us otherwise, so.
No one on Zoom either.
No one on Zoom. Okay, that's good to know. I have a bad habit of forgetting about Zoom. Any other questions or thoughts?
yeah, my only question is, like, for the public hearing, how did you announce that? And is it possible that there's voices that we're not hearing? I don't think so, but I just
So
thought
we,
I'd ask,
we did the legal ad in the newspaper, ran that twice, which is the state requirement. We posted the agendas to the usual place. We did not do a butters notice. The planning board rules, I was reading through it. It's kind of new to me. It's a little, this seemed like it kind of was in between. The rules call out that a butters notice be sent if uses are added or removed from districts. or modified, but there's also a provision for minor changes that,
It's definitional, really.
yeah, so it seemed like this wasn't so much the use being changed as more of the use kind of being, the same use being expanded out to a duration. So rather than jumping immediately to sending a butters notice to the entire RR1, RR2, and MDABA districts, we felt come here first. If the board felt strongly about that, we could always table the discussion and send out further notice if they wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, I think the campground, or the company, I guess, or Doug and his family and the company have done a good job over the years. You have the track record of working with the abutters. We have had, you know, a room full, not of angry people, but a room full of people here at various stages in the past as we've worked through, you know, zoning changes for the desert of Maine, and mostly there have been some concerned voices, but mostly also very supportive voices in the past. So I would assume that, I mean, I think, it sounds like you guys have worked with, can you speak to that, Doug? Just briefly, have you been in touch with abutters about this particular change, or it sounds like there's maybe another change following?
Yes, we've been in touch with our nearest neighbors. The ones that are most affected are the ones on Desert Road. So we reached out to all of them and explained what the change would be and gathered their feedback. And one neighbor had some additional concerns around traffic. And so that's the neighbor we have a separate agreement with that would put some additional restrictions above and beyond what this definitional change would imply. So we have rules around capping the number of cabins lower than what we actually could rent, just for them, to make them feel more comfortable with the change. But yeah, so basically the neighbors that are most impacted by traffic gave their support.
Great, so that's, yeah.
And I think,
not like an official process, but.
yeah, and in terms of like other campgrounds in Freeport, there just really aren't that many that can do this yet. I mean, in the future.
And to your point, that's the concern, is that the next guy won't have that side agreement. But if he decided to build 30 cabins or 40 cabins and do this, it would go under Project Review Board, and it could be addressed at that point.
And I think, just broadly speaking, at least from, speaking for myself here, like, if we have businesses that are encouraged to come here and build cabins that people can rent year-round, that's great.
I
From my
don't think it's a
perspective.
problem.
Yeah, I don't see an
You
issue with
gotta hear out the people.
Oh, totally, yeah. Yep. Any other questions or comments? I believe we still need to officially open and close the public hearing. Questions or comments from the board before we do that?
Nothing further.
Motion to open,
Motion to open?
and a second?
Second.
Wayne gets that one, I think.
Sam, who made the motion?
Dave made the motion, and Wayne had the second. All in favor? All right, public hearing is now open. Any other members of the public who wish to comment? Doesn't seem like there are. Do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion, close?
Given that there are quite literally 0 other members of the public here or on Zoom. Dave made a motion to close.
Close.
Second from Bonnie. All in favor? All right. Other thoughts from the board?
I think we should support this, that's all.
Yep.
I mean, we had a long tradition, I mean, most of the cabins in Freeport are torn down, there's one set left, but down on Route 1, we had a string of cabins up and down Route 1 that were
Right.
just like he's proposing. You know, no cooking facilities, but there were cabins at the cafe, there were cabins Varsity Inn, there was half.
Andy, is your mic is on.
My mic's on.
Not sure what that is. Sorry to cut you off there.
Anyways, there's a lot of cabins up and down Route 1, and they served just this purpose, so.
All right, does anyone wish to tackle this motion?
Be it ordered that the Freeport Planning Board recommends to the Town Council that the zoning text amendment application submitted by the Heathstead Family Holdings LLC to amend Section 104 definitions of the zoning ordinance to remove the seasonal requirement for cabins within campgrounds is consistent with the comprehensive plan to
Bullet point right above.
was consistent to to maintain Freeport's economy as strong and stable, providing a diversity of goods and services that attract visitors and state's residents, and again, consistent with the community's character and promoting Freeport as a destination to visitors.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Oh, that was really close. We'll give it to Bonnie on that one.
Yes.
All in favor? All right. Wish you luck in the next stages of the process.
Thank you.
All right, item number 5. Where'd my agenda go? So this is related to subdivision, sorry, I got it. Subdivision ordinance amendment, so technically the first one is related to the zoning ordinance amendment. We're going to hold a public hearing to discuss proposed amendments to the Freeport zoning ordinance regarding exempting multifamily structures from subdivision review per Title 30-A of the Maine state law, clarifying density standards in the C4 district, updating site plan review submission and criteria standards, and additional non-substantive text amendments related to updating nomenclatures and updating quantities of project review board submission materials. So as I started to say, this is sort of all related to our process to hopefully remove certain structures from, or certain projects from subdivision and let them move through our process in a more streamlined way, hopefully save a meeting, and certain structures can go just through site plan rather than going through subdivision as well. We will hold 2 public hearings because we have changes to the zoning ordinance and then also changes to the subdivision ordinance, and each of those changes requires its own public hearing. Kyle, do you have additional context here?
I don't have too much to add. Caroline's going to do the presentation because I didn't feel like doing this one.
Yep.
Yeah, general process is still the same as far as public hearing with the board, finding it consistent with the comprehensive plan, and then if a positive recommendation is made, we go to town council for further discussion. Thanks,
So I'll
Caroline.
correct Kyle because he was willing to do this one, but since you started talking about this in 2022, it didn't seem entirely fair since he just started in September. So back in 2022, you had initial discussions on various aspects of cleaning up municipal ordinances, I think where this was raised, and part of this was also subdivision cleanup. So what you have before you tonight for the zoning ordinance amendments, I think Sam's summary from the agenda summed it up pretty good. We're trying to get a lot of things done at one time. So you have general cleanup, which we're always doing, like correcting titles, all that stuff. You have amendments pertaining to a recent finding by the project review board that multifamily meets certain criteria required by the state of Maine and should therefore only have to go through site plan review. You have amendments here that reflect the desire of the project review board to be our second board to go all digital. And then I think that sums it up. So I will just kind of go through really quickly. There were 2 amendments in here that looked substantive, maybe, to a reader, but they were not intended to be substantive. So that was a change that I think one of the PRB members caught, that we took design review when we shortened it down to the River Bridge. The commercial 3 was no longer in design review. So that change is going to be made. It's really not substantive because C3 is already not in design review. There is also a standard I think you guys looked at with cannabis in the past, in MDA, MDB with residential structures. It's just clarifying the word should be structures and what's considered residentials. Some substantive changes were again reflecting the number of paper copies people are now submitting because the PRB is going digital. So we really only need to be requiring what we need for a public retention, and then we still like to keep on in paper because some people do still like to come into town hall, see what's going on. And then as you talked about at the last meeting, it was realized when Cecilia was reviewing this that the C4 district didn't have a land per dwelling unit for multifamily units outside of subdivision. So you guys discussed it and just decided to carry that same standard out. I think the biggest substantive changes here relate to the multifamily exemption Again, the state of Maine required that we had to make a finding that our site plan standards were adequate or address stormwater management, sewage disposal, water supply, and vehicular access. I think both boards had talked about this, but the ultimate finding by PRB is that those were addressed. So what you have before you here is some language now in the ordinance in section 201 that clarifies when a multifamily is exempt from subdivision. As discussed by both boards, it would be in the case where you have one structure on one lot and no new road is being created. If you don't hit all three of those things, you would still be a multifamily going through subdivision. So for example, a multifamily project where they had multiple buildings, they would still go through subdivision. This is just one building, one lot, no new road. And then throughout the ordinance, we just had to do some cleanup for the applicability in every section. The planning board did talk about the differences between site plan review and subdivision review, and there were a few things that you wanted to retain that the project review board also supported. A site plan does not require a public hearing, it's optional. So the planning board wanted to require a public hearing for multifamilies that are now going through site plan review. So that has been added. And then something that had come up from the project review that the planning board was supportive of was that in subdivision, an applicant has to demonstrate financial and technical capacity. So there's now a new performance standard for that and a submission requirement, which kind of pretty closely mirrors what was in the subdivision ordinance previously. And then you had.
Sorry, Caroline, quick question on that. In our staff memo here, it says a new submission requirement and performance standard in section 602 has been added regarding demonstrating financial and technical capacity. This would not apply to all site
That was
review
a
applications?
typo by the
Is it-
former town planner, not the
Is it-
current town planner. It should read now.
It should be now. Okay, that's what I suspected.
Caught
I just
that
wanted to,
today.
yeah, I just wanted to clarify
Yes.
that, just in case anyone.
It now will apply, and
Now
also that.
That's what, because the emphasis is on the all, so that's what. yeah.
Yes.
Right, so
This
just
applies
to, yeah,
all projects.
all
now,
projects going through site plan are now subject to this standard.
Not just a multifamily, anything.
Right.
Any commercial use triggering site plan review.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for noting my typo on the record.
Yeah, just want to make sure everybody's aware that
The
you're
former
human,
town planner
not
made that,
just, you
yes,
know.
they did. And then also, in the subdivision ordinance, because these multifamilies were going through subdivision, we had a submission requirement for when you have an affordable housing development, which is a type of multifamily. So we had to move that standard into zoning so that whether or not these affordable housing developments were in or out of subdivision, they'd all have the same submission requirement, which is they're required to have maintenance documents and they're required to have some covenants just to note that they are an affordable housing development. So the only thing, question?
Yeah, I have a question right there.
Okay.
I just, I'm not, maybe I just didn't understand it, but I didn't understand why that whole clause was in there. And maybe you just explained it, but it seemed to me if it's one building on one lot, that's the end of it. So what difference does it make if it's one multifamily housing unit, housing building on one lot? So why did you need that clause that says
The affordable
including-
housing?
Yeah.
Because if you remember in LD 2003, that new use of affordable housing developments, when they permanently restrict them, they get a density bonus of 2.5 times the base zoning. So because they're getting that bonus, they need to have, under state law, covenants that go along with that to ensure they're keeping whatever percentage we require of those units affordable.
So the covenants
But what
are
does
made-
that have to do with whether they do or don't go through subdivision?
Because if you had an affordable housing development in one building and you didn't have the standard in zoning, you wouldn't have a standard noting that they need to have that restriction in place.
So-
Because it was in the subdivision
Oh,
ordinance.
gotcha.
So
it's
we're
just
just
moving it over.
moving it, so
I
it
got you.
applies to everybody.
It's just made necessary by state law, so we stay compliant with state law, basically,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so you're making it easier in some cases to do an affordable housing development. We just need to make sure the same standards get carried over, whether they do one building or multiple. Make sense? Okay, so the only thing we talked about at the last meeting that you just should be aware of as the planning board is that subdivision and site plan are different processes with regards to density calculations. When you go into subdivision, your first step is calculating the net residential acreage. You take out wetlands, steep slopes, some other areas, so it can decrease the amount of area you have to build on. So when you divide by the land per dwelling units, it could be less in subdivision. Not in all cases, you won't really know that unless you do a land analysis. I just want you to be aware of that, so if everyone wants housing, most people want housing and we want to see more housing, but if we get to a point where we're seeing too much housing or we're seeing too much housing in certain places, you had made the choice to not get into making density adjustments. I just want to flag that so you're aware. In some cases, it could be more restrictive. In some cases, it could be less restrictive, like where you have village open space subdivisions. Nothing that you need to get hung up on, but just something you should be aware of.
Could you explain in what way it might be more restrictive?
So, for example, in the Village Commercial 3, you have village open space subdivisions. And in a subdivision, the land per dwelling unit is actually lower for multifamily than an outside of subdivision. But so today I was like, all right, well, let's just look at this for fun to see like how it compares. But you can't really do a straight comparison because like you have to
Because they're
deduct
calculated different
parking and
ways.
they're calculated different ways. And you don't know if they have the wetlands that have to be deducted or the steep slopes. I mean, I think if you had a lot that had no deductions, which I've seen maybe once, you could be being more restrictive, but usually because they have the deductions, you just don't know. But we do know that that land per dwelling unit in the subdivision for village open space is less in subdivision. But we haven't seen really many of those done. We've only had a couple. I don't think the impacts will be great either way, to be honest.
Yeah, it seems like basically it comes out in the wash most of the time, where if
Yeah.
you have if you're allowed higher density under subdivision, but you have to remove certain parts of your lot, then you end up kind of in the same place.
Yeah, you really don't know. It's just something to be over. And again, we're not talking all subdivisions. We're just talking that multifamily in one building on one lot.
Right.
If you have a large, I mean, I could see where it could be less restrictive. It's easy to imagine how it could be.
Yeah, definitely.
Large lot.
If you have a
that's
large
mostly
lot
wetland.
and you don't want to, and you're building one building on it, and so
Yeah.
now all of a sudden you have great amount of density allowed on a small amount of land, but you still have the envelope
I think
restrictions.
the other side of that argument is also, well, then good. That's
Then
the
good.
highest and
That's
best use
generally-
of that lot,
That's
because
right.
you have, if you have more wetland on that lot but it's in an area that encourages density.
That's right.
Then you put the building in the part of the lot that can support it, and the stormwater management and everything else that would be captured under site plan anyway should be protecting that resource, the wetland resource. So it seems to me that there are safeguards in place, and that we're sort of hopefully, I mean, again, we can't possibly go through town and analyze every situation, every potential situation, but it seems like in general, this is a pretty good balance of supporting projects to move through.
Yeah, I think as long as you're aware that in some cases it might be allowing more lots. But again, if you're in one structure, and like Mitch said last time, if you're next to a wetland, most people aren't going to want to go through the permitting, so they'll tweak it, move it, build up, and you still have buffers, setback, visual, all those other things.
Right.
And generally, all good.
And that was all I had for you, for zoning.
I think there's only one other comment that I think what neither one of you sort of said, which is that the overriding goal here is to make it easier.
Yeah.
Yes.
To
Yeah.
simplify, it comes out of the downtown vision process, that one of our action items was to simplify the permitting process. And so to have an extra meeting for a single building seemed silly.
Yeah, I see
Yeah,
Brett
you-
nodding along in the back, and I know that we have, this has been a consistent sort of gripe from developers and others who have come before the board over the years is, how can we take this process and shave off a month or two?
And I
Because it
will
tends to
say, in some cases, you could have been adding a couple of extra meetings.
Right.
So will go towards what Mitch said, those efforts identified in the downtown vision and various things in your comp plan that you can consider.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Are you looking to be consistent in, like, when you say Director of Public Works and Public Works Director? I'm just curious.
We like to be consistent, so if you found an inconsistency, I would love for you to bring that to our attention, and then when somebody made a motion, if they chose to, they would note as amended at the meeting. Where did you find the inconsistency, Bonnie?
Well, in the zoning ordinance on page 108, you've got, it was Public Works Superintendent, it now says Public Works Director. And then jumping over to subdivision ordinance on page 70, Public Works Director was a strike-through, and then it says Director of Public Works. So you've got Public Works Director in zoning ordinance, and you've got Director of Public Works in, you follow?
Yeah, let me just take a quick check, because I think we have multiple occurrences in subdivision, so
Probably,
we
I mean, there's
probably-
probably more, but my eyes just happened to catch, I was like, wait a minute, I think I saw that differently somewhere else.
Yeah, I think that's a great catch, and so I think you're right. We should go with Director of Public Works, because that's what's used throughout the subdivision. So that's a correction on page 108, which would be under section 602C 2E.
Yep. I didn't look for others,
That's a good catch.
I assumed you were trying to be consistent, but I wanted to check.
So Carolyn, it also says Public Works Director on page 69. That was unamended. We didn't touch that. That's just how it said it. And then page 73.
Little search.
I was just
going
gonna
on
say,
there,
please
yeah.
tell me
Yeah.
this is a find and replace and not how
So,
fast you can read.
Right.
Yeah, I thought it.
Yeah, maybe we could somehow just note that you would recommend that any references to Public Works Director get updated to Director of Public Works before it goes to the council.
Right.
Did you need the other one? Just the one
Do
that
you,
I
no,
saw.
no, 69, 73, 108, and what was the other one?
Well, in the subdivision ordinance, page 70 was the discrepancy that I saw, so.
Well, there might be more.
That actually is correct, Director of Public Works, though.
Okay, we will do, yeah, we'll do a word search on that if somebody works it into the motion.
I was wondering why the salt marsh and the salt meadow were totally wiped out.
Sure. Actually, I think you're in the subdivision ordinance, which
It
is the
is
next
this,
public hearing.
okay.
So let's take that up next, and I do have an answer for that, so ask again if I forget.
Great. Wonderful.
All right. Any other questions? Should we open the public hearing?
Motion to open a public hearing.
All right, and so that was Dave has motioned and Bonnie has seconded. Public hearing is now, oh, sorry, all in favor? It's unanimous. The public hearing is now open.
I move that it's closed.
Anyone on Zoom?
We do have one person.
Somebody's on Zoom.
Wait.
I don't know if they have a comment or not.
Maybe part of North Star for all we know.
They are not part of North Star. They are a resident of Freeport.
Oh,
See
well.
that for
we-
me, Millie?
I know.
If you have a comment, can you raise your hand and we can allow you to talk?
No pressure, though.
Yeah, if not, don't worry about it.
All right. Anyone who is in the room who wishes to comment on this? Either of you?
Motion to close.
Motion to close from Dave and a second. Anyone?
Second.
Bonnie again. All in favor? All right. Public hearing is now closed.
Entertain a motion.
Any other final thoughts or comments on this? For just speaking for myself, I'm happy to see this progress. It's been a long road, it's been a long time. I think it's good that we had the chance to, I know we kind of waited, rather than tackle it as part of the LD 2003 process, we waited until staff had a little bit more time to do it the right way. I think it was worth it, and we got some feedback from the PRB along the way. I think we did it the right way.
Could I just ask one question about that PRB? So they were, we negotiated all those corrections to cover the
Yes.
loss, but were they supportive of the idea?
They were supportive, which is why none of them are here. They went through the language at their last meeting. They had a couple good things they flagged that were more legal cleanup and subdivision. We went ahead and made those changes or adjustments because they made sense. So yeah, they were happy with it. They were sent notice and all the documents again for your meeting, but it was noted they were supportive, so
Okay,
they
great.
chose not to come.
And who can blame them, really? Okay. Any other? Nothing else? Somebody want to tackle this proposed motion or recommendation? Let's see.
Be it ordered that the Freeport Planning Board recommend to the Town Council that the zoning text amendment to amend Chapter 21 zoning regarding exempting certain multifamily structures from subdivision review, clarifying density standards in the C4 district, updating site plan review submission and criteria standards, updating quantities of project review board submission materials, and other non-substantive text amendments, including adjustments to section 602C2B, changing the Public Works Director to Director of Public Works on pages 69, 73, and 108 of the zoning amendment.
And anywhere else that it might be found.
And anywhere else that it might be found. To be consistent with the town of Freeport's comprehensive plan in
I didn't provide any background policy recommendations for this one.
This is a housing, really a housing.
Yeah, providing
Or-
a wide variety.
providing a variety of-
Housing types and
housing-
options, right?
Housing types and options throughout Freeport.
That is one of the bullet points on there, something like that. I think that works. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Bonnie. All in favor? Excellent. All right, and the final public hearing of the night is a related one for the subdivision ordinance amendment. Caroline, do you want to walk it? I guess I should give a little bit more. So this is, for the record, a public hearing to discuss proposed amendments to the Freeport subdivision ordinance regarding exempting multifamily structures from subdivision review as made possible by Title 30-A, subsection 4402, subsection 6. I really don't know how to read that. And it also includes non-substantive text amendments such as updating reference documents and updating definitions and amendments per the town attorney's recommendations for clarification of ordinance language and ease of review, and also updating quantities of project review board submission materials. Caroline.
So I would say, in general, this document hadn't been cleaned up as much as the zoning ordinance had, so there's a lot of just general cleanup, like correct terminology, staff titles are hopefully consistent, some stuff like that. We had also, during LD 2003, got some legal cleanup that was to be done here. So the staff brought forward a bunch of the legal cleanup in this version, knowing that this is an important project for the planning board, that they wanted to move forward, and that we have some additional overhaul to this ordinance planned if we get the details of the grant that we applied for. You have some of the legal cleanup, but you're not done seeing this document. You'll see additional legal cleanup at a later date, but it was stuff that warranted more substantive conversation, so that was for phase 2. Again, this ordinance, Article 2, has been amended to reflect the multifamily exemption. I'm not going to go back into what that is because I just did, but I'm happy to answer questions. Getting to Rosemary's question, in Article 3, you might remember during LD 2003, or not long after, we had a resident come in noting that we had inconsistent definitions in this document in the shoreland zoning document. When we did the new shoreland zoning ordinance, we forgot to amend these definitions. So we did go through, and for the applicable definitions, we did amend them. There were a couple things like a wetland for subdivision. It has a very specific definition, and so we had to keep that to be consistent. We still have the shoreland. In the case of the salt marsh or salt meadow, one of the things our attorney pointed out is don't be defining terms if you're not using them in the document. So Cecilia had done a word search to see if there were terms we were defining and not using. We were not using those, so they got struck. And those are defined appropriately in the shoreland zoning ordinance. Again, there's multiple sections throughout here to the number of paper copies and recording plan copies to reflect the trend of the project review board to go digital. You will notice that Appendix I had been deleted. That was the sample letter of credit. As a general rule, as a municipality, we've been trying to get away from having forms and fees in our ordinances because every time they need a change, you have to amend the ordinance. So we're striking that here. We have an amended form ready to go. One of the advice of our attorney is you have a lot of reference documents referenced here, so why don't you create an appendix so they're all in one place? So we have that, all the titles and references have been updated, and you'll see that a new Appendix I. And again, we already talked about under zoning, some of the affordable housing submission requirements were struck from this document because they've been moved to zoning. This had a lot more text changes when you went through it, but I think a lot less substance. And as we talked about the last meeting, some of the things that were changed were to be consistent with state law, like the changing of 30 to 45 days for turnaround. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Pretty good with it. Anyone else? Questions or thoughts or comments? Should we hold our final public hearing of the night? I hear a motion to open it. From Mitch.
I move.
And a second?
Second.
From Bonnie. All in favor? So Mitch and Bonnie. And the public hearing is now open. Anyone wish to comment? Our lone Zoom attendee also is welcome to comment.
If you're on Zoom, just raise your hand if you wish to comment, and I can let you speak.
Once, twice. Do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
I move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Second.
From Dave, right? All in favor? All right, public hearing is now closed, and once again, does anyone wish to attempt a proposed recommendation to the council to advance this?
Oh, come on, somebody.
Be it ordered that the Freeport Planning Board recommend to the town council that the subdivision text amendment to amend Chapter 25 subdivision regarding exempting certain multifamily structures from subdivision review, updating definitions and references, documents, updating quantities of project review board submission materials, clarification based on legal review by the town attorney and other non-substantive text amendment is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Cleaning up.
In that, it.
In that.
Sorry, we
sorry.
have to find it consistent with the comprehensive plan.
It is.
In
that it is clarifying and cleaning up language?
It has to be in the comprehensive plan, so we got to pull it out.
Sorry, Dave has the most.
Okay,
Here we go. Pick your poison.
okay.
And I think there's a housing
I think
section.
there's
Allowing a variety, no.
Of neighborhoods and, there you go.
Neighborhoods and housing types
The one
at a
right there.
variety of prices.
Perfect. Do I hear a second?
Thank you, thank you.
This
Thank
is
you.
a
Second.
very important document.
Bonnie has the second on that one. All in favor? I believe that was unanimous for the fourth time this evening. That was record time by like a whole number multiplier compared to other public hearing evenings. I don't think we've ever done 4 in a night before. Certainly not in an hour and 20 minutes. Not even.
10.
An hour and 10 minutes. I would propose that we take a very brief break.
Do we have to
Actually, sorry,
close
we do
this
have,
meeting?
yes, okay, yeah, no, I'm getting ahead. Well, we don't, do we have?
No,
No, we don't have to close the
Oh.
meeting yet.
Oh, we don't have to.
We can.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we don't have, so I would propose we take just a quick break. We have some snacks here in the room. It's an advertisement for anyone watching. If you're not here, you're missing out on delicious snacks that are here in the room. And we will welcome Charles Edelman from North Star Planning after that. But we'll just have a few minutes here to stretch our legs, maybe get a drink of water.
Awesome.
Cookie, and then we will reconvene. It is currently 7:15, so let's say like 7:20. We'll try to be heading back toward our seats. Apologies if you're watching.
Oh, goodness. Stand up.
All right, welcome back. Slightly longer break maybe, but I think it's good to enjoy the good food that is here in the room. And you should feel sorry if you're not here watching this. I always have to plug, right? We want more people to be involved in these processes. So, but hopefully some people are paying attention at home, and we do appreciate Charles and Ben from North Star Planning being here to bring us up to speed on the latest with the comprehensive plan update process, which has now been underway for what, 6 months? That's a guess.
We're coming up on a year.
Are we really?
Yeah.
Our first meeting was a meet and greet in December of last year.
December of last year. Wow. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Cool.
Awesome. Yeah. So take it away, Charles and/or Ben.
Well, hi again, Charles Tettleman and Ben Smith from North Star Planning. Just moving right along with the comprehensive plan. What I did want to start with is kind of what we're doing tonight. Last time I was here, I introduced the visioning. We looked at the old vision, went through what we liked about it, what we didn't like, started interrogating what has changed, what hasn't changed, what worked, what didn't work. We also have recently had 2 more workshops. We had a housing workshop in September. We had an environment workshop in October. And on the 18th of November, we have a future land use workshop. So we have been busy doing comp plan work. Behind the scenes, the team has been working on stakeholder outreach, so working with other town committees to review inventory chapters, sending surveys out to business stakeholders, just keeping us on track. As I mentioned last time, we are kind of in that exciting, looking forward stage of visioning policies and just goals, policies, strategies, visioning, and ultimately implementation and then adoption of the plan. So we are in the, I would say, second half of this. We're just finishing the public participation. We'll be done really at the end of the year. We'll be kind of going into that plan drafting and the meat of it. But what I have here is just kind of like key moments of the last year. We've gone through the inventory chapters. They've been posted on the website. We've gotten a load of feedback. The committees are involved. The committees are itching to get more chapters. I think we've given them more chapters, so we're getting tons of feedback. We've talked about the visioning survey and workshop where we had nearly 450, 500 people respond to it. We had the housing, we had the environment workshop. And I just wanted to highlight, as we go to really jump into visioning tonight, what we've learned. And I think we've heard from feedback from people at these workshops, from the planning board, from staff. We wanted to really highlight the 4 big findings, and I don't think these will be a surprise, that there is a level of growth based on the population projections, the amount of housing that the downtown vision calls for in the village, and infrastructure investments, thinking of the dog bone infrastructure work that's being done in town. We had a whole workshop on environmental stewardship and climate resiliency, and a lot of talk about the climate action plan, the active living plan, and what that means. The housing workshop talked about housing affordability challenges, access challenges, so types of, not a lot of renting, not a lot of housing that's available, meaning the medium home values are high. And there hasn't been too much development. Even before the pandemic, there wasn't much at all. Then Freeport got one of its first multifamily condos, apartments built in 2021. So we're seeing that trend change. And we've talked a lot about the economy. How do we, move away from, not move away from, but kind of supplement the retail economy that's not doing great following the pandemic. We've talked about, people have given feedback about restaurants in downtown. And these are just what we're hearing, in our research and our writing, but also a lot in the public participation. So I'm sure all of you have, in some way, had these conversations, heard people talk about this. And I did kind of hint towards this about what's next. So currently we're working on visioning. We're moving into future land use workshops, so creating a new future land use map for Freeport, reviewing stakeholder outreach. What are people saying? What are people's feedback? What are we taking away from the workshops? And then ultimately going into goals, policies, strategies, and implementation processes. So we are, again, at the visioning stage of this, but it's important to see what's ahead and what's the importance of this. And I'm actually going to skip ahead a couple of slides real quick to kind of talk about what this process is and why it's important to visioning. Because I think last time we talked, I kind of let this part dangle in the air, didn't really give it its full breadth of why a vision statement. Can you hear me? Why the vision statement is important. I feel like I just went off, but we're good. So we start with the inventory drafting and public participation. We all know that. But the way we're looking at this plan specifically is how the vision statement and the future land use map and the future land use narrative kind of work together. They're going to be setting the stage, the foundation for goals, policies, and strategies. While the vision statement will talk a lot about what are the challenges now, what is Freeport currently, what is our identity, what are our values. The future land use map will kind of augment that, saying where will we have growth? Where do we want to have conservation? You're familiar with your current future land use plan. So wrestling with those, once we can really understand, identify the growth areas, where do we want to see growth in the town? What is the vision for the Freeport for the next 15 to 20 years? Then we'll be able to really go at the goals, policies, and strategies with kind of the whole picture rather than going from vision, jumping into goals and policies, jumping back to the future land use map, coming back to the goals and policies. So we're kind of grouping the vision statement, future land use map narrative, and future land use narrative kind of together. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's important to note too that if you look at this process, clearly the inventory work, I've called it, I think in this room, it's basically the book report. That's where we've done a lot of research, and we're working with the town staff and committees to kind of review the existing conditions and make sure that the town, this group, and the planning team have a very good sense of what we need to be planning for, what is happening for existing conditions. But also public participation started very early in this process with the survey that was open last spring, even before the very first meeting we had with the public in June. That's happening throughout the process. I think Charles is focusing on the workshops, the bigger public kind of topical workshops that we've mentioned, the housing, the environment. But public participation has been happening throughout the process. So I just want to remind folks of that. And some of the things that we're going to talk a little bit more about with the visioning is the stuff that you can't look up in the book. You can't get that from the state. That's coming from the community. And that's, I think, going to be a bigger focus of tonight's meeting.
Any questions before we really just charge into the vision? Great. Is this one? Perfect. So this is the current vision of Freeport. We won't have to dive into it again. We talked a lot about it. But what I want to talk right now, or point to right now, is the form of a vision. So I'm going to show you this vision, the vision from the recent Yarmouth comp plan, and another one from Gray. And there are three different types of vision. So this one you have, for Freeport, they identified the 6 or 7 main goals and some bullet points that can kind of support that. So to make it a desirable place to live, Freeport was talking about enhancing waterfront resources, ensuring that workers in Freeport can afford to live in Freeport, talking about building design, traditional pattern of New England development. Really to the point, again, this is a vision, so these don't really have to be actionable. Those are more goals and policies. But this kind of paints the picture. Like, here's our goal. Here are some things about it. Here's the next one. It's a lot more easier. It's easier to digest. It's easier to read. But when we were kind of reviewing this, we heard a lot about, these were a little vague, not really helpful. What is a desirable place? What are we looking for?
Before we dive too deep into the anatomy of a vision statement, the vision statement, the purpose of the statement in the plan is really that goalpost in the future. What is the desired future state for Freeport as a town? And I think there's folks sitting up here who have a sense, a really good sense of what is the vision for the downtown, right? Because we just went through a downtown visioning process as a community. This effort is looking beyond the downtown and thinking about the community as a whole. It's the kind of aspirational future that we're going to be working toward. So that vision statement gets established relatively early in the process, and we shape the future land use map and the goals and policy strategies to kind of get us toward that vision statement. So that's the purpose of it. It's an important element of the plan. It's a required element of the plan. So there's a number of different ways to approach it. And I think one way to approach it is relatively simply just kind of bulleting out some of those important aspects of Freeport, and that's what we're looking at here.
An alternative is what Yarmouth did, a combination of the goals, like identifying 4 main goals that are the kind of carry throughout the plan, but also giving a short vision statement. Town of Yarmouth is a small, vibrant coastal community, highlighting what the identity is, what we're focusing on, and then allowing these 4 goals to be the primary theses of the whole plan. So it connects, if you jump into the Yarmouth plan for context, it carries throughout the document, expanding on each goal, how those connect to the goals and policies and whatnot.
Did you guys do this plan, or is this just you?
Yes.
You did. Okay. So you're saying, like, I'm just always keeping in mind one of the criticisms of our existing comprehensive plan is that it's too vague. So, but the point of it, I mean, the vision statement is kind of necessarily vague, right? It can't encompass.
Aspirational.
Yeah, it's aspirational.
It
But I
is,
see, you know, yeah.
yeah, definitely meant to be aspirational. That's what we're working toward. It is the Freeport in the future that we all want to
So it would
improve
say,
and preserve and work toward.
so you might have a policy recommendation later on in the comp plan, or a sort of something that might say, hey, this is with number 2 in mind, create, expand, and protect housing throughout Yarmouth. Here's what we recommend, and then it has the specific policy.
Exactly.
Later, after this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think as you look at these, the vision statement, some communities will say this needs to fit on a bumper sticker. Our vision statement or a business card. It's got to be short and easy to remember. Other communities want to write a whole chapter about what they're like, this part of town is going to look and feel like this. And as you move to this other part of town, or move to Main Street, and then you move to the rural parts of the community, this is how it's going to look and feel. The important thing to remember about the vision statement is that either in the statement itself or in another section of the plan that we'll be talking about in a little bit, there needs to be enough detail in there that will help town staff and town council and future planning boards think about, you know, reading this plan, how are we going to adjust our land use ordinances? How are we going to consider zoning updates? How are we going to think about growth and prioritize certain areas for investment and change and other areas for preservation? So there needs to be enough in there, and that doesn't always fit on a bumper sticker. So I think that there's different ways to present this as you think about it, either in the statement itself or as part of the future land use planning, where you can get that level of detail and get, you know, eventually very specific actions and strategies.
And that third option, or a third option, is that more longer form. And so this is from Gray. You might not be able to read it. It's tough to read for me from here.
I get the idea.
Yes, but
It's longer.
It's longer.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more thorough. It really jumps into each of the issues and how this relates to the town. And then they were able to add some like value statements as well, which is on the right. So it talks, like they say, the one that I'm going to call out is Gray has a great small town feel, and then a paragraph expanding on what that means. So they have their vision, which is talking about what they want the town to be, and then they identify here 5 values that they kind of expand on, that their primary focus, and kind of the vision, the values kind of feed into the rest of the plan, form the goals and policies, and provides that. So these are just 3 different types of example as we go into talking about what should be in the Freeport vision. That is kind of what we're saying, and not to look at these, copy them, jump into it. but these are just what different types of vision statements are. There's no right answer. There's no perfect fit. There is just what this group, the town will have some sort of, we'll be able to share this with the public at some point too. So if it's too long, they'll tell us. If it's too short, they'll tell us. But it's really up to Freeport to find out what that vision is, what needs to be in it, what doesn't need to be in it. So I just wanted to provide some examples for you to think about as we kind of go into the talking about the vision. And again, this is the process we're looking at to frame it. To what Sam was talking about, I have kind of pulled apart different parts of the vision. This is not all, but a really solid 4-part way to approach it. You have your core values and identity, the challenges, your barriers to overcome. So what issues do you foresee? What are currently challenges or barriers in the town? What are opportunities? What are real concrete paths forward for the town to take, to expand on, to revisit potentially? And then future focused goals. I know we have talked about potentially being too aspirational or out of reach, unobtainable, unrealistic, but what are those future focused aspirational goals? Because I think it's important to set a bar of what the vision should be. So what is Freeport in 15 years? And what I'm going to do tonight is walk through all 4 of these, pulling quotes from the survey, from what we've heard from the workshops, what we found in the inventory chapters. It's not it does not cover everything, so I do want to hear from you at each stage, and I'll explain each topic in a little bit more depth. But I felt like this was a good way to break it up into a way that's a little bit digestible, so we can touch on all of these and figure out what we want to focus on for the vision. Now that I'm seeing that font, it is not looking too great.
We can read it.
I was going to say, even I can read that
Yeah.
from here. It's saying something. I know there's people further.
It's not ideal, but yeah.
But it's
Nice
It's pretty
font.
crisp, though. You can read it.
It works. But
It's a font.
again, so the top talks about defining Freeport's core values that guide decisions and reflect the identity of the town today. You'll see some of these are, positive, a desirable place to live, sounds familiar. But we also pulled out that it's hard to develop in, unaffordable, losing retail jobs, but active in environment action, climate resiliency, providing a rural lifestyle with access to downtown. These are just quotes we've gotten from the board, from the community, from workshops.
Were these quotes in response to a specific prompt or just okay?
General,
Okay.
just things that speak to what people are feeling today.
Yep.
Some of them are kind of combined of others. But do you think that this is, reflective of the core values of the town? Is something what's missing here when you look at this?
Identity's missing. The identity. It doesn't say anything about the coast, the fishing community. There's no identity at all in
Right.
there.
What
Our manufacturing.
Our manufacturing, we were a
have a
shoe
big-
manufacturing place. I mean, there's no identity at all. It's very,
These are observations about the town, but they don't seem to be even near a vision,
Yeah.
no.
which are value-oriented.
Yeah. And this is just components of a vision. This is not supposed to, be the vision, but these are just what we've heard from people. So definitely, Rosemary, if you want to kind of expand on that identity piece.
Identity, that it has to mention that we're a coastal community, which means lobstering.
To be
And
fair, we're
Is
coastal.
there-
A lifestyle town offering quality coastal southern Maine living. That, I guess, is it.
that is disgusting.
There it is.
I mean, I'm sorry. but That's really,
That
that's
doesn't-
just so superficial. Yes.
Like a magazine article.
Right.
What'd you say, Andrew?
Sounds like a magazine article.
I know, Southern
Real estate.
I do think we, in the vision plan, we have to be prepared for a certain, and anytime we try to make something this short form, it's going to have a little bit of that glossy feel to it, just almost by necessity.
Yep.
But I know what you mean.
But
it does
I-
feel, that's not going to be the final sentence. But I think it's getting to how can we sort of get all of these various points into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for what Rosemary was saying, that you're calling out the coast. Like, that's important, that is a
Very
core
important.
feature.
So our working waterfront and supporting
It's a
our,
working-
and
yes.
supporting our working, diggers and fisher folk.
Well,
and-
they're almost
and
two
sea,
different-
oh my gosh, aquaculture.
Seaweed, oysters.
Yeah, sea farmers. It's probably not the right term, but you know what I mean. Aquaculturalists.
Well, surf and turf, there's also farms here, folks.
Right.
It's like-
So I think it might help if we sort of organize just like words that matter. So one of them was, or at least constellations of words. So that there's that whole constellation about coastal community. I'm going to take off the working waterfront for a minute and just talk about beautiful place to live, bucolic, rural, lots of open space, coastal. That's all the things that make Freeport a place to live.
Has it all.
So those things that's one whole area. Then there's another whole area where we have a diversity. I just wrote down the word diversity, but it means diversity of people, diversity of economics, support of a full, I don't know how to put it, but, a community that has a full complement of things, like a small, it's like a little small city, because it has ideally a mix of industry, employment, and people.
Yeah, I think we are currently pretty strong in some parts of diversity. Some diversity metrics, like we have a wide range of businesses in town. Like most towns that have, how many people do we have? 9,000, something like that.
But it's a value.
Don't have a $1 billion company that's doing some manufacturing, some distribution, some, the executives are here, and then we also have the working waterfront. We also have some farms. We also have a tourist industry. We also have
7
we have a
breweries.
really
We have-
diverse economic base compared to most 9,000 person towns. I think is fair to say.
Right.
David took a stab at writing a
Yeah, I was-
too that, yeah.
I was responding to this and trying to get to what are the themes. So one is a nice place to live and all the stuff that, one is a nice place to, a full service
I didn't realize you were
community.
talking about it, sorry.
And I had 2 others that I thought were sort of fundamental to at least our aspirational goals and, vision. One of which,
Copies to follow along, but nobody jump ahead because I'll get in trouble with Charles.
Right.
okay.
Thank
I
you.
did email you the presentation.
You want the
so-
gavel, Charles?
What was that?
So you want the gavel?
No.
I've never
Don't want me
used
to
it.
have the gavel.
How long has it been? 7 years or 8 years? I don't know.
Oh, this is this, good.
Yeah, just so someone said it's hard to
Yeah,
read.
somewhat easier.
No jumping ahead.
Just getting.
Well, so I don't think sustainable is the right word, but it's down there. And I don't know if active in environmental action and climate resiliency is the right word either.
I
But
didn't put too many words up there.
yeah, but there is a whole constellation of vision around being a smart community that's transit driven. We have a train, we have a breeze, we want to lower traffic, encourage walking and biking and all those things. So that's and there's a climate action group that is very, much stronger about this than I am, but they believe that that's a fundamental value, and I think it's been confirmed by the town, maybe not all the way, but as at least something people care about. And the last one was the vibrant downtown. That's a treasure. And we're trying to figure out how to protect it as a treasure and keep it
Maybe
vibrant
prop it up.
in light of the changes in the retail environment.
I think I do want to kind of point to that other, I selected a few here that, I'm seeing the not fully positive messaging, but what are some identity components, not necessarily core values, but the identity of Freeport, like unaffordable, any of those that, are important to highlight as like the state of Freeport today.
Increasingly exclusive.
Yeah.
Is that a challenge? Or is that just part of
It's a challenge. I don't know if that's part of our core values.
It's-
The core value is we'd like to have a diverse community. I think we've heard that repeatedly from most everyone. And I mean, to some extent, I'm hoping this drives conflict, because there are some portions of the community, and I don't know how big, that want no growth and want to keep it exclusive and quiet. And so I think we have to confront that in this process and tease it out and maybe prove that the consensus is on one side or another.
Yeah, but I think some of these things contradict each other. If we don't want traffic, and then we're trying to fill our downtown storefronts.
Well, that's, yeah.
And we're trying to have more people living downtown.
I think we find that there's always going to be contradictions.
Correct.
Yeah, so.
Small and large town living.
And I think-
Well,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I talked too much. But you had one other thing here. The very last sentence, I was, in some extent, responding to your draft here.
It's
That
David's.
was
I thought
not
it was David's draft.
Oh, David's.
That's what I was talking about.
Awesome. I mean, awesome start, because, you know,
Yeah, it's a
sort of
start.
pulled this out.
Yeah.
But I thought the last sentence was elegant. The last, you know, growth is not the objective of this vision, maintaining our vibrancy, creating a more economically integrated resident population, and diversifying Freeport's economic base are objectives. That's beautiful. I wasn't sure it was true. And I wasn't sure, and the part that I wasn't sure it was true is that do we or don't we wish to accommodate growth? The inventory said that there is a natural tendency to have growth here, that the likelihood is that the population will increase. But we could not have an increase. We could just stick with the 50 houses a year that we build and not encourage more.
But that, yeah.
That doesn't.
I think there still would be growth. I mean, I don't see it quite in that binary. Like, I see it sort of in terms of more or less action relative to, you know, the status. Looking at just through like the land use policy lens, like there's more action, changing more of our existing policy or less of it, so to achieve more or less growth. If we don't do anything, we are going to keep growing.
We will
most
keep
likely.
growing, right? But
But if we want to grow less, we would actually have to make changes to grow less. That I don't.
Well, I don't think anybody wants to. I don't even think anybody in the community that wants to keep it as it is going to say no more new houses. You know, we have 50 new houses a year.
Well, I think that would be a pretty
But my
tough-
point is, I think we should say that there is some growth we're trying to accommodate, and of what kind, so that we get the community to say no or yes.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, you know, you got to think too about the downtown vision plan, don't you? Didn't that have a recommendation to put 1,200 people downtown?
requires-
So the town has spoken on that, and they want it here, and they want it downtown, and that's where I think it should be too.
To be clear, I don't
I
disagree
just
with any of that.
And I
Yeah,
want to jump in and kind of, you know, curb this, because we are talking about the vision, a lot of where the land use growth management will be part of the future land use.
There's a vision thing here, which is, I think what the downtown vision said, and what this group has been saying, is that we expect growth, want to accommodate growth, want to control the growth, manage it, be smart about it, but and channel it to help support a more diverse community. And I'm not sure that has consensus agreement, but I think if that's where we're going, we should be honest about it and have it out.
I would respond to that and say, you know, we are hearing that. We're seeing that in the data. We saw that in the visioning survey. We heard that at the housing workshop. Even at the
So
environmental.
let's be explicit about it, that it isn't that, you know, managing growth or being smart about growth is a goal, not just no growth, or because growth is not the objective. Almost sounds like we're not
It's
trying.
not the objective, but it's the reality.
Right.
It's not the objective, it's the reality.
So we have to capture that.
Or it's a
It's
made necessary
necessary
to achieve other ends.
Right. For a functioning town, you know, I think, you know, part of the thinking on my part was, when I'm thinking about this, is that the downtown vision plan wanted 1,200 new residents because it made the economics of town work better somehow. I can't remember what Brett or somebody said at one point in time, but that stuck with me. And so, you know, okay, so the downtown vision plan looked at that, and they said it would also help this town run more efficiently in some way. So that to me is you know, it's been thought through.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, the values of vibrant downtown and maintaining rural character, that's, you know, that's
That's
like
it,
the whole,
right, you know?
that's the
And-
whole thing. How do we
and
protect
that's-
as much open space as possible?
Exactly,
Without,
exactly.
while also allowing for more diverse, you know, how, like it says in the current vision statement, you know, more diverse housing types at a wider variety of prices so that more people can live here. Doesn't mean everybody can carve off their own 2.5 acres, but it means that if you want to live in Freeport, hopefully you have a much better chance of finding a place that's within your price range.
Yeah.
You know, we'd all love 5 acres on the waterfront, but we're not all
Yeah.
millionaires either. So.
Any other thoughts on core values, identity, things that topics we haven't touched about? I know we mentioned open space a little bit, recreation.
Yeah, I think outdoor recreation is another kind of core value here. I think a lot of people come here for it, in addition to the, you know, to the shopping. That is something they come for. They come here to live here for that, and they come here to vacation here for that.
I think that, I mean, in the past, I think, hasn't that been pretty explicit as part, wasn't that pretty explicit as part of the downtown vision plan too? It's sort of like, I've heard it referenced as like making Freeport an outdoor economy of, you know, encouraging not just Bean, but other places they offer experiential or offer experiences to visitors. Like, yeah, we'll take you on kayak trips, or we'll put you on a mountain bike, and we'll, you know, those kinds of things. I know there's been an attempt in town to encourage those kind of businesses, not just Bean, but others too. And making that explicit, I think, in the vision as like an outdoor community would be great.
One thing about growth is that it serves affordability. Property taxes keep going up, and if you want to stabilize them or even decrease them, you need the right type of growth to bring in tax revenues.
That's something I'm keying in on is it's not just growth. It's when you say the right kind of growth, it's where is that happening and what does that look like?
Right, but ultimately the quantity has to be there in order to stabilize or lower property taxes.
Right, and different housing types in different locations in town have different effects on property taxes and services and existing infrastructure.
One of the points of the work in the Housing Committee and the Dog Bone Group is that the cost to maintain, the cost to the town and the revenue from the town, that looks better with heavier, denser housing and looks worse with 5-acre lots.
Right.
Say again?
The cost to the town to be a town in support of a 5-acre lot in comparison with the tax revenue they receive is upside down. But a multifamily building or a more dense unit, the cost to the town versus the revenue they receive in taxation is to the positive. So it's actually healthy for the town's economy.
Maybe that's what it was that I'd heard, that.
I mean, I'm not sure I have the proof case on it, but Brett does.
There was quite a bit of talk about that at the housing workop.
Yep.
It was kind of, yeah, it was.
Some of the feedback we got actually was that it was too one-sided. I thought, didn't somebody say that? That it was like everybody on the panel was presenting one vision. I think one possible counter is, well, it's a data supported. Like, there have been quite a few studies that show that, you know, this is the sort of relationship you can expect. It's not the only way to do it, certainly. It's not that you can't say, well, I'd rather live in, you know, 2.5 acre lots off a subdivision. Okay, but that's fine. But these are the numbers that support development in this way to maintain a certain property tax base. So,
The town's not a money-making enterprise.
Right, exactly.
The value here is diversity of population and economy.
So I do want to go to the next part, which is what are the current challenges? And these may not be something that will ultimately make it into a vision statement, but to kind of some of the realities of the situation. I know we've all agreed on the decline in retail sales. There's climate change, things that are outside of Freeport's control. Again, we're not going to plan for another generational pandemic. We're not going to plan for, like we talked about in 2008 during the inventory chapters, we're not going to plan for like a recession, but there are things we can kind of get ahead of. things to note, things to acknowledge, and how those kind of impact the visions, or how, climate change, sustainability, resiliency kind of all blend together. So in the face of climate change, we become a more resilient community. We already have a sustainability committee, so continue the work with the climate action plan. But I also talked about a few other things we heard. So access to open space, trails, and parks, lack of rental units, unaffordable housing I mentioned, not inadequate public transportation. The opportunity you just mentioned, Mitch, it's there. We have Breeze, Amtrak, pedestrian. We're trying to do biking, walking, but it's just not there yet, is what we're hearing from people. And then again, I think the one I do want to call it here is the unable to live and work in Freeport, and that plays to a lot of the stuff we were talking
It's
about.
the same
housing.
thing. It's
It all
all,
blends into it.
I think only three things there. One about diversity of housing, one about, climate, smart growth, transportation, all that stuff, making it a, smarter community. And the decline in retail sales, which affects our downtown, and how do we keep that vibrant? Because we all like it.
Yeah, I mean, I see access to open spaces, trails, and parks as
Another one.
as a challenge. I mean, relative to.
We do better than most
Yeah, I was
places.
just gonna
right?
say.
Yeah.
But I still-
There's always room for improvement. I would love to see more access right from downtown.
I'd love to see
more places.
trails from downtown to
Yeah.
Hedgehog, trails,
Totally. Yeah.
paved,
Yep.
multi-use trails from downtown to Hedgehog and to Wolf Neck, or at least that direction.
Yeah, I would love that too. But we do start from a place that's above average for.
Then again, you got to go back to the
Well-
whole economy with that, because you're asking for,
Yeah.
Right, so this
Well,
it
yeah.
connects a little bit with the work of the Complete Streets group.
Wasn't there just a referendum yesterday that we all voted on regarding trail money?
Correct.
Yeah.
Get that.
Right.
Sorry, Mitch.
No, that's right, and so that's all part, but the Complete Streets group has a lot of work that they've done on not just what a good street looks like, but trail systems and connecting to the greenway and all that does connect to the recreational part.
And then with regard to other transportation issues, I think that some sort of shuttle service shared between Brunswick, Freeport, Yarmouth would be a good, something to run back and forth, take people to businesses along Route 1. If we're going to have housing potentially, on Lower Main Street or down, the Route 1 corridor, and those want to be kind of on that, a diversity of housing, or to help create a diversity of housing in the town of Freeport, lower income or condo complexes like we saw go in on Desert Road or whatever it was. That's going to be, I think, a necessary kind of a service, more than just a breeze coming by once in a while. I think that, I don't know how often that comes, but I think it's barely.
More and more often.
More and more.
Pretty regular.
Well, maybe that's the solution there, I don't know, but.
Pretty regular. People seem to ride it back and forth to work.
It's getting more, they've got bigger and bigger buses, and I see them all the time, and they're pretty full.
All right, so maybe that's.
People.
I think this is interesting. The challenges don't often make it into a vision statement, but they are an interesting discussion because it's another way to kind of triangulate in on those core values, because what people are concerned about is
Solving.
really good clue of what people care about.
Right.
And so when you're saying, it's housing, it's open space and trails, it's transportation, those are all the things that
Downtown.
we were just talking about.
It's all the same thing.
Right.
They would be ameliorating these problems.
Right.
Correct.
So if you had said, something
all new.
else
Right.
that wasn't discussed a moment ago, I would probably want to talk about it. But there does seem to be some pretty good agreement on, now that we've aired some of these challenges, that it supports some of those values.
And from challenges, as I talked about before, we move to opportunities.
David already
And
jumped in with
we've already,
us.
like, with the transportation. But I think if there's large, we've talked about housing as a, general feature. But what are the opportunities that the planning board sees, to step outside of your role as the planning board? What do you see in Freeport? What would you, I think this isn't really like the aspirational piece is next. But like, what are the real actionable, achievable things? So whether it's short term or, like a multi-use trail from the downtown to other places, Hedgehog Mountain to the coast. What are some opportunities and areas where Freeport can expand, innovate, or improve?
I like all the words you have there. I don't know if people have stuff to add or delete, but that looks sort of the things we should do.
I mean, a lot of this is coming from what I've heard, what we've seen, what I've heard from you guys, but I'm just looking for more of like, what else? Like,
Yeah.
all of it's not going to make it into a vision statement, but at a certain point, a lot of these will make it into the plan.
It's the same thing, that resilient, well, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, building on the one we just talked about with access to trails, being
Don't look.
I mean, I see that if it's a challenge, access to open spaces, it's a real opportunity as we have all of these trails, systems, and open spaces in Freeport. And so maybe the opportunity is connecting them so that the access is improved. Because, you can, with a little effort, you can get from one to another, but it's not always easy, or it's not always easy to know where you're going. So I see that as an opportunity to take what we have and improve it.
One thing you mentioned at the last workshop, how animals can't go places. They're blocked by, we're talking about humans. We've got to remember the animals are not able to go through.
Yeah,
Their paths are blocked.
Yeah, the fragmentation
of those developments.
This is why we have no moose in
Right.
the coastal side of 295.
Got to talk for the animals.
But this list looks consistent again with where we were on the first sheet. So the resilience planning is sort of transportation oriented,
There's a lot in there.
Mixed-use development, innovative housing policies. There are specific things we can do with zoning and incentives. It's a long list. You can go look at what the housing committee is working on, but and what's with tax increment financing, with zoning, and with specific, there are concepts. I don't want to go too far down this road, but there are ideas that the town could even take a more direct role in identifying or promoting certain land uses in certain places. So that's innovative housing policies, but it's consistent with where we were.
I think opportunities are doing some of the things that we're doing, updating the design review ordinance, updating the zoning ordinance, and more specifically, increase building heights, continue to maintain large lot sizes in the rural districts, try to, focus as much of the development as possible downtown and other, denser areas of town, South Freeport and other districts that are scattered around town that have density. Streamline approvals and, cut red tape, promote walkability by creating desirable multi-use trail systems, as already mentioned. These are just notes I, put together green building incentives to support our climate action plan. There was a recommendation about stormwater management with regard to...
You in the vision plan?
This is just things I've researched.
Oh, this is yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
His list.
And,
Your list,
let's see, what else? Transportation, manage traffic around downtown and the Route 1 corridor. That can be a little bit, people live down on Wolf's Neck, for example, are coming down 125 and 136. There's congestion issues. So I think those are opportunities for us, to make improvements here in town. How are we preparing for climate change and higher ocean levels? Supporting cap goals, shuttle,
David, go back to, I'm sorry, I'm trying to connect the dots. You mentioned Wolf Neck, and then you mentioned 125 and 136, and.
Well, coming out of Wolf Neck, you're coming into downtown and getting around downtown sometimes in the middle of the afternoon or any time other than, it doesn't bother me because I'm roll through down there very early or coming in the evening. But my wife complains about it all the time, coming out of Wolf Neck and trying to, get down to Yarmouth or wherever. It's just, if we put 1,200 more people downtown, there's probably going to be some increased transportation issues we have to think about.
Okay.
And then 126, 125, 130, that's not an area that really affects me, but it sure seems like a lot of traffic comes off of there.
It's ridiculous.
And that there's going to be some
because all
transportation
Dream from Lewiston.
issues.
Because so many of your
Yeah.
people
Just-
use that to access the highway to go to work to
Mm-hmm.
Portland, but
Yes.
some of them access it to come here. A lot of your retail people come from Lewiston, Auburn, because that's where
Right.
they can afford to live, and they can barely afford to
Well, they're
work
just
here.
coming from Lisbon to Portland, and that's the route.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But you got a lot that come here, that work here from those
Yeah,
areas.
both.
Yeah.
And then take as much subjectivity out of the design review ordinance as possible, just to make it easier for developers. I mean, I think that's a big impediment, it's developers. And I also think a big impediment is the amount of time it takes to do anything. Holy moly.
Really?
I think you said cut red tape. I had put on here with the first slide, challenges of development. We talked a little bit about it for the housing inventory. I do want to, unpack that, the difficulty of doing stuff in Freeport.
I don't necessarily have all of the answers on that, but.
That was cool.
Well, we did a thing.
So proud of the public hearing tonight.
You what?
You were so proud of the public hearing
We
tonight.
rattled
Just
through.
moving, certain
Making those-
projects
yeah.
out of subdivision.
What we did at the end
Something.
to cut, we cut
Yeah,
a major
exactly.
step out of a certain type of building.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
we've
mean,
been
it's not,
talking about it
it's
for a
like
long
none of
time.
these zoning changes are gonna be earth-shattering, but
No, they're not.
it's a step.
But
you
the more
know?
we can
Right, I mean,
streamline for
with,
people.
I've been
For 'em.
sort of running numbers on a commercial property in town to see, and, 7.5% interest rates right now, we can't change that, and makes development and commercial properties really
Yes,
hard to,
that's absolutely true.
That's true.
We really need to change our reputation toward developers too.
Yep.
Yeah,
Because they
but-
just drive right by.
Yeah.
Contractors don't want to work here, developers don't want to come.
Right.
Augusta's friendly, Topsom used to be friendly, Waterville's friendly,
We're not.
we're not,
Yep.
So that's, and if we,
Westbrook.
right,
so.
so we can have all
That's a hard
these.
nut to crack, as far as changing that perception.
Well, I think you can, it's a sales pitch, Gotta have people, I think, here in town that are, that are recruiting developers, recruiting businesses to come here. I hope we have economic development folks that
So maybe
do
that's,
that.
maybe that's a real, maybe that's something that's worth sort of calling out more specifically in this opportunity, is an opportunity to redefine Freeport as a,
Yeah, I think I 100% think we need to do that.
Yeah.
Have to define it, we have to welcome that, so if we want that to happen here, it seems like since I've been involved in these things, it's a lot of talk about wanting things to happen in downtown
Right,
Freeport,
right.
and nothing seems to happen down there. Like, we gotta go change some things and tell people we are a business-friendly, developer-friendly environment, come on in. And get people to come in. Maybe you have to give somebody an incentive to get them started, if it's that
yeah,
bad.
The Chamber works on it, FEDC works on it, but once again, you gotta get somebody that wants to come. You can sell them the best pitch in the world, but they have to say,
Well, they
okay, I
have
want to
to-
take a shot and come to Freeport.
Well, yeah, but they're out there. They're out there.
Well, but
What little I
hasn't
understand, what little I understand
much
about it,
changing
the
here.
criteria is, how many people live in downtown, what's your average sale, how many restaurants, these national retailers, or whoever wants to come and fill a
No, we're
space.
losing
I'm not sure national retailers are going what we need back. We should keep some of that,
Oh,
but
yeah, but if somebody's gonna come, they have to be able to say, is there enough traffic to support a local restaurant, or a national restaurant, or a store of any size? You have to have, you gotta be able to crack the nut of how much you're gonna pay per square foot, and what your sales are gonna be per square foot. You worked in retail. right in the downtown, and it's a tough deal these days.
It's tanking.
Yeah, it's tanking.
There's definitely market considerations
Yeah.
for sure
Yeah,
when it
that's right.
comes
That's
to
right.
residential
I mean, we can attract all the
development.
people we want, but if we can't
We gain a
provide them
few,
with
we're
the
losing.
numbers and the environment to succeed, they're not gonna come, so.
Well, this.
It doesn't need to be
comes back
retail,
housing.
though. It just doesn't need to be
Well,
retail.
some of it has to do with just putting it out there really raw. The rentals are extreme. Extreme. What are we going to get in Gritty's now? Couldn't come to an agreement there. We're losing Gritty's.
So
Really?
Gritty's
I'm
is
afraid that
November 30th.
Gritty's, this is an open meeting. I mean,
Sorry.
no, it's totally fine. But I mean, I'm aware of what we're working on the dog bone group, which may or may not come to anything, but it's a thought that would.
Don't sell yourself short. I think
that
there's a lot of
would-
potential there. I mean,
Well, but the point is, it's leading to denser development in that location, and that may be why Gritty's leaving. I'm worried, Brett is responsible, that they said that their landowner, you saw why, right?
No.
Their lease
yes.
is, they're not renewing their lease, they're a renter. And
Right.
the
And they
rent.
won't even entertain a
They won't even
short-term lease.
entertain. So the landowner is smelling an opportunity to redevelop that site.
Yeah.
right.
But if we want, I don't have the answer to this, but from when you mentioned I work downtown, so I don't know how much knowledge people have of this, but the rents in the Freeport Village Station, anybody have a guess on how much they are per space? I mean, I worked in a fairly large retail space, but over 20 grand a month. It's a lot when you're not making the sales
No, it's.
and you're
crazy.
struggling. You're working with, we had 3 people that consistently worked, 3 of us. I worked alone most of the time. It's a struggle. That's why it's tanking. I'm really concerned. If I hadn't worked there, I wouldn't have seen
That
that.
should only be about 6% of revenue. So multiply 20,000,
You mean your rent should be 6%?
your rent should not be more than 6% of your gross revenue in retail. So you figure out how much you'd have to sell a month to make that work. It's like 200 grand.
It's not happening.
More than that, 300 grand. So it's ridiculous.
This is what I'm saying, though. I mean, you've got your core that are going to stay there. You talked about national, your corporate. This was not a corporation. It was he had 3 stores, just an individual owner. But I
It's
don't know.
worth mentioning that the vision plan specifically talked about retail, diversity of retail, and, it's been disproportionately national retailers, and the vision plan said that the ideal arrangement would be 1/3 national retailers, 1/3 regional retailers, Beans, I guess, would be something like that, and 1/3 small, local, individual.
I mean, I know they've got things in the works, and I had a conversation, I just happened to mention to Cecilia about what was happening, and she said, I think you should speak with Brett. So I had a conversation with Brett about it, about what's happening. And I know you can't tell people what to do, that you can't tell these new owners and the management company what to do, but I've spoken with their marketing director when I worked downtown, just to kind of give them a little flavor of what we need. And that place, first of all, it needs some major love. It's does not look attractive at all. There's nothing to attract people there.
Which place do you mean?
Freeport
Freeport
Village
Village
Station.
Station. The kiosks have to go.
The whole thing. Beans is a draw because Beans is a draw.
Right, clearly they're investing. I mean,
But
ton of money in Freeport. So, but it does. I mean, yeah. I think there's opportunities in the downtown.
I think there's opportunities.
I'm hopeful that eventually, after my discussion with Brett, I don't know, maybe months ago, maybe it was a month ago, that we're going to see some mixed use eventually in there. It takes time. I mean, back to the 80s, we decimated all the retail, all the residential and put up retail. And now we're kind of trying to find our balance. But you can't come back to it like that, but we have barriers, so.
Yeah, there was no barrier to, you took out a building permit, you built a house. There wasn't what color your windows, what color your doors, what kind of shingles, blah, blah, blah. I mean, those were a lot of that stuff downtown was post-World War II housing. And it was completely decimated, and, you know, what comes back is not post-World War, and not even individual housing probably. It will be high-end rentals or maybe a condo. So you just can't replace that kind of housing we had. And those people all work downtown, or very close, walk to work. Our relatives walk to work all the time. Barely drove their car. But that's never gonna come again, so you have to figure out how you're gonna mix whatever you're gonna have for businesses downtown, whatever you're gonna have for residences downtown. And is it gonna be like a, you know, a mini Portland neighborhood with some corner stores and some nice little restaurants and a lot of housing? You know, because I don't think we can count on the retail anymore.
There's too much online. I mean, it happened well before the pandemic. It was heading in that direction. The pandemic just accelerated it.
Why would you go shopping when you can call Amazon? You know?
So I think this is good because
All right.
now I think we're getting into the point, we've talked with the barriers and I already showed the slide, so why am I even hiding it?
Well, can I say two more things about opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely, please.
One is just to well, first of all, we should mention someplace in, maybe not in the vision, but FEDC's role and the Chamber's role in, as we're talking about development and enticing, that I don't want to forget them. But the other one is.
I think Brett, since you guys saw the economy section, Brett added.
Good.
Yeah.
The vision plan, I wonder if it has anything in there that we should be double checking. I haven't read it lately.
The downtown vision plan?
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of opportunities, they may have identified 4 things that we just didn't mention here, and it'd be.
Just a quick on those 2
You
points.
should not miss what's there.
We're going to be drawing direct connections to the climate action plan and the downtown village plan.
Good.
This one's before when I
Okay.
asked
To the
about it.
plan, they're going to be in it, so we'll get that to you, but you'll see that in the first draft of the plan. We're already working on it. It's already mostly done. We're working with town staff on it.
And my last one, this may be esoteric, is signage. I think
There was a whole
signage.
wayfinding effort that.
Wayfinding, and that is
Yeah.
one of the things that can hold a community together.
That was one of the things that.
And recreation, and build our recreational reputation if you had signage.
Caroline looks like she has something she'd like to.
Actually, if you had come to the chamber meeting last week, you would have heard the update and known that we're already working on getting a proposal for signage and branding updates for Freeport. So that's already in the works.
It's big enough and grand enough and cover enough to make it.
This is important stuff to know,
A thing that
what
you
we're
know you're
doing.
in Freeport because you see something.
I encourage you to participate in that process when it goes public early this winter.
Okay.
Now, Carolyn, is that branding for Freeport or and signage for Freeport per se, or signage for businesses in Freeport?
Signage
Two
for
different
overlap, signage for Freeport, including the businesses in Freeport, but we can't say Andy's store, so.
I understand that, but
Yeah,
I'm just.
business and general signage for the town of Freeport.
Recreation.
Signage has always been insufficient in Freeport.
Right.
Well, technically speaking, we do have a lot of signs.
We have a lot of signs,
Well,
but a lot of people don't read them
Depends on where
correctly.
you are,
Yeah.
you know, I mean.
The number of people that turn around in my driveway would suggest.
Right.
To the contrary.
And how many times I pointed out where LL Beans is,
Yeah.
it's astounding.
So
They
we
really
are
don't
already,
know.
we're already working on that.
Oh, good.
And that will be before this is done.
The new trailhead signs, I think, have improved the town. I don't know if you guys have noticed it.
Yeah.
Freeport Conservation Trust has put up
Yes.
signs at
Yes.
every one of their trailheads that didn't
It's
used to
very
be there.
good. Yeah.
And it's
They're
one
great.
of the things that makes Freeport look like a nice place.
Too bad Carrie's not still here. We could thank her for that.
Oh, who?
Carrie Kinney. She was here earlier. She's
Head
the
of- yeah.
director of Freeport
Noted in the
Conservation
record.
Trust.
Oh, yeah, she spoke.
Yeah.
So I do want to move, for this last bit, we've been kind of talking more short-term, like really tangible, achievable things, talking about the challenges. There's no text on this slide because this is the long-term ambitious aspirations. Potentially, we don't want to include 12 unobtainable things in the vision, but what helps frame a vision is what, the town of Freeport, what the planning board see.
Why isn't it
Important.
exactly the same as what we just said? It's a vibrant community that still has all the bucolic, coastal, rural, open space, recreation, a vibrant downtown, a diverse population.
We will just be raising the height limit on buildings in downtown going forward.
That's
That's the only planning that will be left.
But when,
Let's just do that.
Mitch, I'll push back and play a little devil's advocate here with you.
Okay, good.
That's fun. So when you say in 15 years, Freeport will continue to be a vibrant community, and a zoning amendment comes into the town board, they say, this will make Freeport a vibrant.
Well, that's a bad word, okay. What does that?
I'm just saying, what.
Healthy, economically, I meant economically healthy, good businesses, good, diverse population. Ideally, I don't know about affordability. I think we live in an expensive land. Our land is expensive. It is
This could be
rare.
ambitious and aspirational.
Right, so.
I'm sorry, I'm not gonna say what yeah.
I think it's okay in this situation. I know that we want to be like close. This can be ideals. We can be talking in a big picture. Like even if if we have a mix of a nice diverse mix in housing stock, we have rentals that are affordable. That type of if that's what
I don't say they're affordable is very aspirational. Diverse housing stock, I think we can achieve and should achieve. Affordability may be a different one, but aspirationally, I think certainly the town would like that. Although,
Would they like what?
well, there are two types of affordability. As you know, the word affordability has two completely different meanings.
Right.
One is,
Right.
low end, and the other is subsidized. And subsidized, I'm not sure that there's appetite, nor is there money. So, but low end, meaning a diverse housing stock, smaller units.
One of the things that I heard Andrew say a few minutes ago was related to downtown, how people used to live in town, work in town, walk to work, and then I heard you say that's not going to happen again.
Well, not the way it was.
So, I mean,
That housing stock's gone, it's not gonna come back the
Well,
way
we
it
had
was.
we had shoe factories and all of that. so.
is that because it shouldn't, or is it because
No,
it would be great, but there's some challenges to make that happen?
How many
again?
jobs are you gonna have downtown compared to what we had? That's one
That's
one
a
thing.
big challenge.
Yeah, I talked to a guy, works on one of the stores on the, and he loves it. He's worked in the store 17 or 18 years. He lives up the other side, the cross streets up there, and he walks to work. But, that's one out of how many hundreds or whatever. I mean, we're really a bedroom community for Portland and other suburbs.
I mean, I would love to see us be a bedroom community for Portland, but also have a very good downtown that's vibrant and that's, hopping and has almost a small city feel.
I think that's kind of the balancing act where we're going to want to hone in on a little bit, is because at the same time, there's a lot of people who live in Freeport and work in other places. I did hear people say, this is a self-sufficient, self-contained town unto itself where people can live and work and find things to do on the weekends. So we're going to want to try and.
That's what I meant before about the full town. Like,
Exactly.
not everybody will do that. Most people won't. They'll go from there and come here, but you could.
To fill in where there's, vacant retail now, I think an aspirational goal is if we can fill that in with all the services that a community needs to be healthy. I mean, maybe literally like a doctor's office would be great, You can walk to your doctor and your dentist.
My
and
wife can
your-
open up a.
Yeah, oh, believe me, she's thought about it, yeah.
Place.
So,
Having the, and for, if people choose to, if they want to live downtown, I mean, not everybody wants to live downtown, but if people want to live downtown and work downtown, it'd be great. I think that's an aspirational goal. I think it is. There's a lot of barriers, from regulation to the current market conditions, but, we know how to build things. We have the technology to build housing. It's not a know-how problem. So I think it is an aspirational goal to say,
I think
hey,
it's-
it would be great if you wanted to live downtown and work downtown and never leave Freeport. If that, for some reason you wanted to do that, it would be possible.
everything you want is here. But could I go back to something Andrew said before? We haven't talked at all about jobs. And And I don't know if there's anything we can do about it or should do about it or is even realistic to talk about. I mean, there used to be factories here.
Well, we
That
can-
was jobs here. And do we want to encourage more jobs here?
I mean, all you can do is, if you want that, you create an environment where they'll come. I mean, you can't make people come here and create jobs, but if the environment's positive, somebody will come.
Exactly.
I mean, like the guy down the street at the
AEC.
whatever
yeah.
it is. I mean, he's added on, and we've helped him, and he's added on. He's going to he'll probably add on a few more jobs.
Right.
You know,
Main beer. I mean,
beer.
Yes.
That's
Beer, right.
I mean, I'm glad we're doing this stuff, and that's what we should be doing.
or if there were some affordable space downtown, maybe, you'd have like a marine upholstery shop that wanted to hire a few employees downtown.
All done.
Oh, okay.
You tried.
No, but yeah, I completely, I agree. I think that's exactly what the vision for me is, for downtown Freeport, is to have, a mix of retail, residential, and then like office, type work. I mean, we're not gonna have any factories down there, I don't think, but, whether, it's consulting shops or, there's all kinds of, these are small spaces for offices, the retail setting, it'd be a relatively small office if you want to convert a space. And converting things into different, other than retail. That's what I was saying, we're worried all about retail, and it's great, we got Beans anchors this here for, I think, a long time to come, and that will attract other retail, I do believe, to be alongside of it. But there's no reason, I don't think, unless there's an affordability reason, but it's a market, right? It should sort itself out. If retail's not getting picked up by leases, then they're going to have to do something different with that. I mean, it's just a reality.
And I'm not an expert at this real estate thing, but, at some point, these guys don't want to bother lower the rent or cut the things up. And if it sits empty and they got a huge portfolio, okay, they lose a little money in Freeport. I mean, does this offset something?
Most investors don't let assets collect dust.
If you won't
We
lower the
always
rent and you
have
stay empty for 3 years,
Open storefronts,
Right.
though.
I mean,
They've never been full for
Many,
years, I think, since
oddly
we've had
enough, many
place.
retail places traditionally prefer to stay empty and hold their rent.
That's right.
I've seen it again and again. I mean, there's a limit, obviously.
of course, yeah. There has to be a percentage of it. I mean, you can't overwhelm the whole, but there can be times when people just don't want to cut the rent.
Yeah.
And they don't want to rent the second floor.
I guess it would be interesting to understand why that is, and I think, again, it goes back to having somebody
Is
here
it
at the
long-term
town.
leases? Because it's 5 and 10-year leases, they're 5-year leases that generally renew, so they'd rather go a year without and not be in a bad.
Right, but if you had, somebody here in town, I mean, maybe it wouldn't make a difference, but,
it's something
that's
to keep in mind.
pushing forward on some of these things and say, hey, you don't have any rents in here, we'd like to get some different, let's, and try to encourage some people.
There's not much we as a planning board can do other than maybe listen to if there are zoning
Yes, of course.
considerations that are standing in the way of somebody saying, well, yeah, I would redevelop this as office space, but.
Town doesn't have a want, desire to encourage the economic development of our downtown, then I think we would have somebody would be out advocating for these things among,
So I realize that the place that I work, again, it's not a corporation. He owns 3 businesses, but I will tell you, and I probably am really stepping out on a limb saying this, but last I knew, he did not intend to renew his lease, and he's going to go to another community that is more business-friendly, period, the end, because he cannot.
Does he define
make it here.
business-friendly as rent?
Absolutely, something that's affordable, something where there's people to support it.
I do want to say that this is, we're talking about what it looks like, and I feel like we're going more into something that, no, it's fine. It's important to see how the vision connects to the downtown vision plan and all this. And this is something that the type of work is like, how do we jump into it? How do we look at empty storefronts? How does that, and that's stuff that we can include in the comp plan as, policies and goals. I don't want to lose that. That's why I'm happy to have this conversation, because I don't think it's time lost. But I do want to step back, because we're at 8:35 right now. So I want to step back and saying, what are some things outside of the downtown? So let's, not just step away from the downtown. We know that that's one part, but there's Route 1 South, there's the rural areas. what are the aspirational things in that part of town?
For me, I think the rural areas need to stay as rural as possible.
Right, leave them alone.
And the Route 1 corridor, I could see, first Route 1 South, kind of developing out more so, right lower Main Street, Route 1 South, and then, north Route 1, up towards, north of town. That I think will eventually someday get developed. That's probably further out in time to really see that developing out, but, South Freeport, I don't know, somebody else can have an opinion on that. I mean, that's
Probably a lot of people that would like to see South
I
Freeport
think
stay
that's
right
where I
the
want
way
to see
it
the
is.
changes. And
Yeah.
outside that, I don't really want to see any changes. I mean, Mitch said it one time, it's some people like the nice leafy community we have here. And I think a lot of us do like that.
Yeah.
And we want to
That's
keep
a
it
core
just
Yeah,
that way.
I think it's a pretty legitimate thing to
But
like.
also, these improvements around downtown, the Route 1 corridor, I think enhance our service center, attributes and, it make it even a better place to live.
It's great. So, I'll give out a general call. Any last thoughts on visioning? I think I have a good direction of where we're going to go. I think for the future land use workshop, I'm going to take a lot of these vision ideas, group them up, and kind of throw them to the community, get people's feedbacks on it, get their input, welcome your input again. It'll be one of the 4 stations at the future land use workshop. But any final thoughts on the vision? Maybe returning to the beginning of the conversation when we talk about what type of form of the vision. Do you see something materializing? I know that David has sent his around, which is a, 2 paragraphs, a narrative, a short, but succinct and direct vision for Freeport. Given our conversation tonight, what do you think would be a good form for Freeport? Are you welcome to seeing different versions of it in a more final form? So whether we meet in December or our next meeting's in January, what would you like to see in a vision? Would you like to see 3 different visions, or try to keep the 2 paragraphs and see what's left out and how we can incorporate that in?
I don't know, I guess I have a hard time with a vision without knowing what my goal is.
But I'm with him. I feel like, let's get the storyline straight.
Yeah.
And then figure out how to express it.
That's right. A vision is just an expression of a goal.
Perfect.
My editor's side says, always shorter, always bullet point, always subhead, I mean, whatever you can do to make it more digestible is better, but there's a million ways you could do that.
Yeah, combination of the bullets and the paragraph.
Yeah.
somehow.
Absolutely.
So this may be saying the same thing a different way, but if we go back to that Yarmouth example of, like, they had 4 things, 4 ideas. They're called goals, so that's what made me think of this.
Right.
But the vision is really the desired future. This is what we want in the future. There are some parts of town that are going to change a lot, and there are some parts of town that we don't want to change at all.
Right.
And that's a vision. That's what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like in different parts of Freeport in the future. And the goals are the important policy areas that come out of that vision. How do you make that vision a reality, or how do you move toward that vision? So I don't know if that's kind of what you were saying, or if you start with, like, hey, rural Freeport, downtown Freeport, and diversified, and now we're going to write a vision statement around those things.
I mean, I think to me, it all breaks down to, can we manipulate's the wrong word, but can we design a system, manipulate the system we have or something, so that what happens in Freeport, whether it's retail downtown, residential downtown, Route 1 self-developed, at the end of the day, for me personally, as a guy who's lived in Freeport, I can't see my tax bill go up another 25%.
Thank you.
I mean, I can't keep taking those hits. And so somehow
That's a
we have
lot
to
of people
design
that
a
can't.
system, a financial system, that these things incentivize that allows us to have moderate growth, but then not, it beats back the taxes or makes them palatable so that we can afford to stay in town. When I was a kid, I knew people in the neighborhood had 50, 100, 150 acres, and they would come to me, and they were old, and they said, why don't they want me to own this? I said, what do you mean? They're taxing me off. And it was open space, it was old farmsteads, and they were just like, and the spending is making the town unaffordable for a lot of people, and some for people, it's not, but if you want this diversity, if you want people to stay here and participate in this, they have to be able to afford to stay here too, so. The things that we do to create economic growth or development or income for the town have to be so that the rest of us can survive here, So, because you're gonna lose, in a couple more, another generation, you're gonna lose a lot of people. I mean, I know guys that have lived here all their lives, hundreds of years in the family, and they're moving out of town. Because I'll move to a town with town meeting, and my taxes are half, and I can go down to the town hall and get a permit, there's no problem. And that's a choice, but
I'm pretty sure most homeowners in Freeport had a 25% increase in their taxes this year. I just got mine, it was 25%. And I can't believe that the mill rate didn't go down when our assessment went up. Yeah, the house is worth more now, so the assessment went up, and all of a sudden our taxes are 25% higher. Why is that?
Well, I went in to ask the other day, he says, building went up 15, land went up 10.
Yeah, okay, that's true, but then why does that create a windfall for the town? Why didn't the town automatically say if the value is 25% higher, then the mill rate's gonna go down?
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna answer the question?
We do have the town.
Oh, I would love the answer.
Please, Sophie, enlighten us.
So taxes are a function of the number of dollars that need to be collected for municipal, county, transit, and school. Those number of dollars went up significantly last year, which is why taxes went up last year.
It wasn't just the assessment that went up, it was, you needed the more money.
The total commitment went up by a little over $2 million. So.
Just inflation, or what was pushing?
Yeah, but $2 million across the whole is not even 10%, and my taxes went up 25%.
You can't really look at it that way.
Really? If you're paying it, you can.
No, I mean, the percent of taxes, $2 million in taxes should have put your tax bill from $13.75, the mill rate that you had been paying the previous year. When we were going through the budget process, what we were promoting, or what we were not promoting like we want to do it, but what we were advertising as the projected mill rate with no change in the value was 88 cents more than that, 90 by the time council got done with a couple of last-minute changes. So 90 cents on a budget, less than 40% of that budget is controlled by what we do as a town, or our vision as a town, or our town services. The rest of it, we write the check someplace else.
Right, we know.
So when you look at if the mill rate, so the mill rate did go down this last year. The mill rate went down to 13.35. I think it was 13.35, so a 40-cent drop in the mill rate. But the number of dollars collected in commitment went up. So when you look at the value, if everybody was rising the same, actually the commercial sector was the side that got tax relief this last year because their values were not adjusted.
Theirs went down, probably.
So, well, we held them.
Yeah,
We held them. So it's not a matter of change the value changes your taxes. The tax dollars are the same. It's how you cut up the pieces of the pie is what your valuation is determining.
So do you know the percentage of residential versus commercial support for the tax base?
80-20.
80-20? 80 res and 20 commercial?
Well, the value here is tax, that taxing is reasonable, stays reasonable. That there's a value in here of trying to make it work.
And that's why we're all concerned about what happens downtown, and other places too, because it used to be.
Thank
I
you.
think it used to be 25% came from the downtown, and it's less now, and some of these buildings were collecting $55 a square foot, plus triple net, and now they're down at $20 a square foot. And when you run an income producing, and when you tax somebody on an income producing system, and they say open the books at 55, and now they say I'm at 20 now, I need a reduction. By state law, if you're taxed at over 110%, I'm pretty sure you got to give these guys an abatement. And, so, or at least reduce their taxes to match their income.
And a lot of the things we have talked tonight, I don't want to lose sight on.
Oh, I understand.
And I don't think we will.
But we're just airing here.
Yeah. But I think, we're going to be bringing, as I said, these elements of the vision to the community. We're not going to have a vision statement fully prepared by the 18th because I do want to see what types of feedback we get when we talk about a lot of the things we talked about tonight. So I'll try to parse through that, put those out, separate them, pull out the big ones, see what the community says, and get you guys a vision statement. But on the future land use workshop, again at the Freeport High School, November 18th, 6 to 8 p.m. It's going to be a little bit, it's another different format, but again, we're going to be doing presentation, have that interactive Menti, but this time we're going to be sharing 3 land use scenarios for the future land use. So North Star is working with Aceto Landscape Architects to develop some future land use scenarios. Ben, do you want to speak more?
Are we going to see them for the first time at that meeting?
We're sharing the concepts with staff. We do not have maps here tonight. The meeting will be before the next planning board meeting. The scenarios are being designed around some of the things that we've shared earlier, the elements that we've been talking about, we're viewing as sliders so that some scenarios.
Can you explain the 3 scenarios?
Yeah. So there's 3 scenarios being developed that balance elements of the vision statement differently. And they show land use patterns that prioritize. One will prioritize conservation as the primary key value. Another is going to show downtown development with small neighborhood development around it as a key value, talking about downtown vision plan, walkability, and so forth.
I think your mic's dead.
Oh, thanks. Yep, this one's very live. And the third one is going to focus a little bit more on what happens on Route 1 south of the village and north of the village, and thinking about.
So these are not 3 alternative scenarios. They're 3 different ideas.
They are meant to be realistic, plausible future scenarios based on the.
But all 3 could be yes.
They should. When you look at the scenarios, you should be able to see things in here like that could happen based on the vision statement we're developing, based on current land use patterns, based on current planning like the downtown vision plan and the climate action plan, investments where sewer and water are today, and some of the plans that you've mentioned earlier around the dog bone initiative. So the idea here is you're going to see things that you like in each one of these scenarios because they're all based on the vision statement. They're all based on the values that people have been sharing with us. But you're also probably going to see things that you don't like in each scenario. And the purpose of the work is not to pick a winner or vote for the scenario you like the best. It's to kind of set up a conversation with folks about, how do you balance, and we heard a little bit about this at the environmental workshop, how do you balance some of those environmental values with the values that the people are expressing around more affordable housing? And where do those things conflict, and where can we find some agreement as a community on development, preservation, investment, and those kinds of things. So, question?
Yes, I do have a question. What a surprise. So I keep thinking that the core thing the community has to reach consensus about is how much growth and where is the growth? And those scenarios may spark the conversation. But can I just bring up one thing about the dog bone that's been eating at me? And I had a long conversation with Brett about this today. He was supposed to talk to you a little bit about it. But there's sort of two parts to the dog bone that I keep thinking, I don't know if they need to be surfaced at this point, but it doesn't hurt. But if we build 1,200, 1,500 units someplace between downtown and Maine Beer, what does that look like? And how much traffic does that? And I believe that, I mean, just what I know about land use, it can be accommodated. It's not too much, but it would change the roads. It would change the traffic patterns. It may require side roads to the main road, and you could make it a beautiful boulevard with the complete streets and the path down the middle. But I'd like somebody to look at that, and if they're going to freak out, you know, I kind of want to raise the conflict if there's any.
Oh, people would freak out. No
Well,
question about that.
You know, I don't
Freaking out about a unit right next door.
I mean, I don't want to. I want this all to happen. I think it should happen. I think mostly there's consensus that happen, but I feel like if we're getting community input, they should know what's up. They should have a chance to voice their.
Sorry, that sounded overly glib, but I do see I think listening to the point, you know, about taxes and about guided growth and guided development. I think I see one of the core goals of this plan is to make very clear the connection for the community between, make the connection very clear between a certain type of growth and development and maintaining reasonable taxes. To say, this is how this type of growth in these places can support this community. And drawing that connection and making it really clear, I think, can help to sell that sort of development along the dog bone, and to sort of get out in front of the concern and ultimately justifiable fear. But I think the fear that comes from, or the uncertainty maybe that comes from, when you just say, hey, we need 1,200 units downtown, everybody's like, because you don't know what that's going to look like, and you don't know what the impacts are. Everybody thinks immediately like, oh, we're going to need more schools, oh, we're going to need more roads, oh, the taxes must have to go up. And it's not that taxes would never go up or that you never have to build a bigger school, or that, but it's being able to draw the line to say, okay, this is why this is the most sustainable growth. It's better for the environment. It's better for, and so
protects the rural areas.
So laying that out in a way that people can understand, and not everybody's going to agree with it, and that's okay. But I think finding the right finding the best way to lay that out for people should be the overarching goal of the comp plan. It's like saying it's a sales pitch makes it. It's not really a sales pitch as so much as it is a data-backed plan. I mean,
It's
so
surfacing what could happen, and I think that's what you're saying.
Right.
You want to surface.
Right. So what we're trying to do is fine tune these things so that we don't end up with a scenario that's so unrealistic that people won't take it seriously, or they'll just kind of laugh us out of the room. We're not going to show a commercial strip from the Cousins River to Brunswick, because that's not plausible. It's not realistic. But I think the other thing I wanted to address is we've had a couple conversations with staff, and it's very clear that their feedback is, use as much of the existing planning work and the existing data as you have. This isn't, again, these are scenarios, but they're not completely pie in the sky. They need to be based on something, and you need to tie them to the ground, and you need to tie them to town planning. So we've taken that to heart.
Excuse me.
And Brett in particular has been saying, come up with a way, and he's not expecting exact dollars, but he just wants a way to kind of compare. Like if development occurs in this manner, it's going to have implications on, a lot of utility extensions versus this pattern would have minimal utility extensions. This pattern would provide an opportunity for these kinds of jobs. This kind of pattern would result in a different kind of job situation in town. So we're setting up the scenarios to be measured on their impacts on traffic, on the economy overall, with their impact on utilities. So I think that the kinds of things that I'm hearing are also being in our other ear from staff as we go through this. So we're at the point where we really want to flesh these narratives out, because each scenario has a story, and each scenario is going to have a map that corresponds with the story, and it's a land use map. And ultimately, the goal is to come out of that meeting with some good feedback and these good discussions where we can kind of synthesize this into a draft future land use map that would incorporate the best elements from each scenario. So it's worked well in other places. If we do our job and kind of paint a good story, people are definitely willing to play along and tell us what they love and tell us what they hate about these scenarios. I think that's just as valuable as the positive input. So that's where we are. We've certainly got some work to prepare for that. And like I said, we don't have maps to show, but the scenarios are lining up in those three ways.
What I always find somewhat lacking in all this discussion, which has now been a year, as you said, and people are getting tired of coming to meetings and, expressing opinions about the same things over and over again. What's lacking is what's the mechanism to make it actually happen? Because whatever we do, it doesn't build anything, it doesn't change anything. What's the mechanism? And is there a place for that concept in these documents?
There definitely is. And Freeport is not unique. Freeport's done a lot of good planning, just like a lot of other communities have done good planning. And sometimes you hear people say, let's do something. We've been planning for years. Let's make some stuff happen. And that's definitely the goal. And as we get into implementation work a little later this winter, there are some strategies that we're going to be recommending. I think you had a preview of it when we looked at, let's just break these things down into the 4 big things or the 3 big things, whatever, and we talked about them tonight. And if you can kind of group the next 3 to 5 years worth of actions around this longer term vision, I think a lot of communities can get hung up with a 17-page spreadsheet of things to do over the next 10 years, and you just get a little lost. So if you can focus on what do we need to do this year, what do we need to do next year, just look out over the next 2 or 3 budget cycles and keep that vision in mind, you can make good progress of just a few steps at a time.
I think it's helpful, though, to have these scenarios so okay, here's what can happen, and if this were the case, I think that helps people to see where they want it to go. Because it's great to say it. It's great to say it, that we want this change, we want things to happen, we want more housing, we want all of this, but it's the action.
Exactly.
But it's also, I know somebody just said it's not a sales pitch, but it can very much be a sales pitch to get people here to do the things we want them to do. If you paint this in a negative light, or if you say that Freeport is not going to be growth oriented, if that's what we want to be, then fine. But we're saying we want to be growth oriented, to moderate anyways. Then I think you can use it to draw people here. It doesn't have to be, you can use it as a sales pitch to some extent.
So I want to loop back to something that Wayne said that Ben was probably too polite to mention. That we have had conversations about how important coming up with the right implementation strategies is for Freeport. I think we've learned through visioning and climate action plan, and we've struggled with implementation in part due to the number of ideas and the very high cost of a lot of those ideas. So one thing we have asked Ben and his team is to see if they could, I know you also said people are tired of meetings, and I know that, but we're going to space this one out. We felt it was really important to see if they could scope out a meeting when we have, after you see the first draft, you know, all this put together, you see the downtown vision connections and the climate action, you'll have a draft vision statement, you'll have goals and implementation strategies, and the future land use map. We felt like it would be worth looking at the cost of having one additional workshop just to work through that draft with the public to make sure that we fine tune those implementation strategies a little more so that they are actionable. So we're waiting to get, that's beyond the original scope of work, so we're waiting to get a response back from them. But that is an idea that we talked about this week that I think would help address your concern. And that I think is maybe if we stay on track and it doesn't snow and we keep meeting March, April, maybe more April timeline.
I think that one of the advantages of using scenario planning like this is you can take these elements of the vision statement, a vibrant downtown, strong rural character, diversified economy, and you can say, is this what you meant? Or is this what you meant? Or is this what you meant? And people can say, that's what we meant for rural, but this is what we meant for downtown. And you can kind of bring those pieces together. And having a more actionable vision will lead to more action in our experience.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking, let's just assume hypothetically we had like complete consensus on exactly what we want, both for this and for the people who participate in the broader community's meetings. Where do we go from there? We have complete consensus. We know exactly what we want. We know where the growth should be. We know where it shouldn't be. The next step is, who are the developers that are going to build it for us? I mean, we did have one gigantic, proposed development, which everybody hated for good reason. It was way too big. But why aren't there discussions with realistic development plans with specific developers who would do it?
But I think there's a step in between, right? We have the implementation strategy is maybe you need to change your land use policy in this way, and then somebody like Brett, who's the economic development director, goes out and finds the specific people who are going to build it, right? So, because we, at the planning board level, can't go talk to developers.
No, I didn't mean that we do it. But,
yeah. But I think that's the...
But they should be knocking on our door for the discussion, and then if they need a zoning change here or there, then we could consider that.
I think that's part, just on. Hello. That's what we're talking about with a comprehensive plan. It's thinking about how, we acknowledge these core values. We've identified this barrier. There is like a lack of development. And I think that is something we can put in the goals and policies. That comes next. It's not something, we can really, put the comp plan out there, adopt it, and, development will come. There's additional work to be done. And that's what Caroline is saying. Like, it's important to think about implementation even after the goals and policies, once you have all of that. Because it does all connect, but it's also a guidance document. It is a plan for the town, a vision for the town to really accomplish it. And there's things like goals and policies and strategies where we say, somehow get developers feedback in the next 1 or 2 years to, see what the challenges are. We've already talked about the barriers to development in the existing in the housing chapter, and what the newest draft, when you get the full draft, it's going to be, the town staff did a little bit of analysis saying, what has Freeport done? I mean, you guys are doing zoning changes tonight even. Mm-hmm. So it's a moving postmark. But
well, I think it has a lot to do with what Ben had said too, about instead of looking at this entire spreadsheet of what you want to do, like I've taken a look at the downtown vision plan. I've looked at it a few times and it's overwhelming. And like Caroline said, if you try to do all of those things, it's cost prohibitive. But to take a few things to look at that you want to concentrate on and make those things happen. We have to break some things down and figure out what's most important and go from there, and then figure out the steps to get where we need to be. Whether it's a sales pitch, whatever we need to do, talk to developers, whatever we need to do. So we need to figure out what's most important and where we're going to go and what ones we're going to choose.
Well, I think if the implementation piece of it is laid out clearly and the policy recommendations are laid out clearly, and when the plan's adopted, the planning board can just very easily look at it and say, oh, we know what we're doing and we're just going to jump right on this, and it's like very clear.
That's what didn't happen
then-
after the
yeah.
2011 plan. And maybe it was this group's fault, but I mean, nothing.
Yep. And then those public hearings act as that advertisement to, everyone that we've made these changes now. They've gone from the plan to real zoning changes. And that's that spur to start, reaching out to people and attracting people.
Well, but you gotta, your economic development director has to, yeah.
I think the other thing, kind of getting back to what you were saying, Wayne, is you can say, hey, we want housing. And then when someone brings, like, okay, here's some housing.
Not that.
You can say, whoa, that not there.
Not
or
there.
not like
Not
that.
like that. No.
So I think part of our task is to hone in a little bit more so that, if there is consensus about where, how much, what does it look like, that will give the town
Awesome.
good enough guidance to start putting those ordinances in place proactively, so that when the next developer comes, they'll know exactly what the town's looking for.
And you always have those guardrails of the normal processes of project reviews and all that
100%.
stuff.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't worry about that ahead of time as an obstacle. That's, project by project.
But to Dave's point about like selling, there is a little bit of, do you feel like you have that those scenarios will capture sort of what we are trying to sell and have people
So
rock?
for me, the sales part of this comes after we hear from the scenarios. Like when we have that clear consensus.
Well, as long as the scenarios show the ideas that are being considered.
Yes, the scenarios will show all of these ideas.
Good.
And they'll be different enough from each other in the way that they balance some of those values and some of those opportunities, that people will be able to say, this is a great plan for these aspects, but I like this scenario better for these other aspects. And that's what we're hoping we'll hear later this month.
Pieces, right,
Right.
yeah.
And it's kind of like throughout the evening, a reminder, like, hey, you don't have to pick one, you don't have to vote, you don't have to choose a winner. It's really like, what are the ideas? And we're going to set these ideas up against each other and have those conversations where people are like, I hate this because there's no green space connection between here and here, but this scenario has it. I'm like, well, we can put them together, So that's going to be the work. Developing the scenarios is a lot of work. The conversations are good, and then the next step is kind of folding the input together.
So again,
Right.
November 18th.
Did you
6
get what you
p.m.
wanted out of this conversation? Can I give you one late hit on this? One late hit? At the very beginning, you said that what we've learned. Anyway, you could reverse that order. If that's going to be presented to the town, I'd consider going exactly the opposite order. Because to start with growth, the growth is sort of, it comes out of these other things that we want to do. Diversify the economy, get housing, protect the environment, then manage the growth.
Yeah, this was order of my brain.
I know, but I just, those things can matter.
Technically,
Circled it up.
we did skip an agenda item, which was persons wishing to address the board on non-agenda items. However, given that there's nobody here, unless Chalmers, unless you guys.
Still have one person.
We still
Unless
have
the person on Zoom wants to say something, in which case we will give that person
See any hands raised?
Hands
one
raised.
moment. All right, sorry, we did take that agenda item out of order. And there is one final one, which as always is a motion to adjourn.
Oh, they do have. Hand is up. Go for it.
Sweet, all right.
Oh, no. Thank them for their patience.
Allow you to speak. All right.
I cannot read. Who is?
Hi, can
Stephanie.
you hear
Hi,
me?
yes, we can hear you now.
Thank you for your patience.
Oh, no, I wasn't even waiting to speak. I just felt like I didn't want to be a quiet lurker. This is Stephanie Millen. I'm on the FEDC, and I also live downtown. And I have been listening, and I'm so appreciative of all your hard work. You take all the words out of FEDC's mouth and out of residents' mouths. So I have nothing to add. Thanks for all that you do.
Thanks,
Thank
Stephanie.
you.
Thank you for being
We
here.
had a motion on the table to adjourn from Andrew. Do I have a second? From
Second.
Bonnie, I think. I heard
Yep,
that.
that was
All in
me.
favor? Great. All right.
Good night.
Thanks, folks.
Good work, guys.
Take some food home.